And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit, like God's property. It's hard to market, so we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. 'Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black and the vernacular that we're supposed to have.
Most Egyptologists and anthropologists, archaeologists of the Eurocentric persuasion will say that Egypt is in Africa. They had to concede that, but then they still draw the line by saying that they weren't Africans like that. In other words, they weren't dark-skinned people. And of course, this is all part of the Great Deception. And the reality is that if they give up Egypt, ancient Kemet, if they give that up and say that that was a part of black Africa, then they will also have to give up Israel. And that's why they draw the line at Egypt, because if they give up Egypt, they've got to give up Israel.
Now, we're going to go over here, and I'm going to show you where Israel sits on the African tectonic plate, which means that Israel is northeast Africa. Now, when we look at this map, this is the Sinai, okay? This is the Red Sea. This is Egypt. This is the Sinai. This is Israel. All right, this is Saudi Arabia over here. Now, if you see this in Hebrew, it says Haluach Afrikani, the African plate. Here it is right here. Israel is sitting right here. Israel is sitting on the Haluach Afrikani, which means that Israel is northeast Africa.
Without question, we are in Northeast Africa. We are landlocked to Egypt, with the exception of the Suez Canal, which was a man-made ditch, a boundary now between, in fact, it's not even really a boundary anymore since Egypt has reclaimed the Sinai Peninsula. But nevertheless, even those of us who are Pan-Africanists in our thinking and Afrocentric, we forget and we leave off that portion of Northeast Africa and don't want to claim anything beyond that.
Europeans classified this area as a Middle East, you know, and then since this the Middle East, the other question, where the Middle West, where the Middle North, and where the Middle South? They don't have no geographical terms like that.
Well, did you accept that black people? You accepted that black people are Jew, or
no? I'll come to that in a moment.
The entire Bible is about black people. Not only was Jesus black, but every character in the Bible seems to be black too. Yeah, Zephaniah and Jeremiah and Jebediah, those all aren't white people names, okay? And Jesus wasn't some tan, partially melanated Middle Eastern person either. I'm talking straight up black dude, okay? Even in the book of Revelation, when you get the vision of Daniel, he's describing someone with feet like burnt brass and white woolly hair, and we've got the deep running water voice with the red eyes, and you guys, he's black. The Jewish people are black people, like Kanye was right.
Wells comes face to face with the man he's been searching for. A new portrait of the common ancestor of every man today. Adam. Without the skull, we can't know for sure what Adam looked like. But a combination of genetic evidence, vendors' forensic skills, and cutting-edge computer software suggests he looked something like this. Thousands of years after the Bible, and hundreds of years after Michelangelo, we have a whole new face for Adam.
I like.
But the CT scan has one more surprise for Alejandro. Shammai's ethnicity.
Well, they have just told me that Shammai has a Nubian feature, which means that their ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shammai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bones and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African, likely from neighboring Nubia. A huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type, and in this sense, Shammai is representing the society of the frontier, in which different ethnic groups were mixed. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Shammai was Egyptian.
It just doesn't matter. 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 It just.
Where am I actually from? I mean, I know I'm American, but where my DNA is from. And so I said, well, let me take my DNA test. It was a 23andMe DNA test. And I took the test, and I was shocked when I saw the results. It came back, and it showed that I was actually a direct descendant of the Pharaoh Ramses III. And I knew nothing of the pharaohs. Didn't know much about Egypt, but everything you hear about, Bible stories and things like that. So for me, it was a huge shock, and that's how I found out about it.
Wow. So obviously you took it deeper and deeper. You saw all of these synchronicities in looking at images of the pharaoh, how much you and even your brother look like them, and your own company has like an eye logo that looks like the eye of Horus, unconnected to any of this. So what did this open up for you in terms of your own knowledge and learning about this?
I remember I was actually laying in my bed on Christmas Day, 2021, and I was going through my 23andMe DNA test, and that's when I saw that I was connected to the Pharaoh Ramses III, and again, I knew nothing of this situation. And so I looked up a sculpture of the Pharaoh Ramses III, and when I saw the sculpture, I literally screamed, and my wife said, Dexter, what's wrong? I said, this guy from 4,000 years ago, we look just alike.
And this is how we can trace our way back to our genetic Eve and her daughters. So written within it is the history of the world's women, and therefore the human race. Professor Rebecca Kahn was the pioneering scientist who uncovered the first all-important clue.
I started working on human mitochondrial DNA so that I would have some kind of view that was objective, that would help me understand and help other people understand how humans around the world were related.
With this new science, she could. Harmless mutation happens all the time in some part of the mitochondrial DNA, leaving minute markers at every change. These markers are like barcodes and can be read in the same way. Khan and her team discovered the changes happen at a fairly constant rate. They found the groups with the earliest markers were the Africans living inside Africa and wondered if they might be the oldest people in the world.
I was very excited when I first started to get evidence, and it was so counterintuitive. I'd put 20 Europeans and 20 African Americans on a sheet of X-ray film, and every African American showed differences, and all the Europeans looked the same. And I thought I'd mislabeled something, or I thought I'd made some drastic mistake. And we kept repeating and repeating things. And as we got more samples from different areas, I realized that it was a difference in the pattern, and that this whole new type of evidence based on mitochondria was going to change the way we thought about modern humans.
Their bones were discovered in Kafse caves near Nazareth in Galilee in 1933. 13 fragile skeletons, one a woman, a tiny baby at her feet. When these bones were first uncovered, they were the oldest complete modern human skeletons ever found.
The numerous skeletons that have been found in caves in Israel at the sites of Kafse and Shkul show us that there were modern humans outside of Africa over 100,000 years ago.
Tell us more about your work and the coursework that you're doing, because you are a real advocate for this topic and why it's so important in the times we're living in.
I appreciate it. I think the most important thing is like the if so, so what? So we've established that there are these individuals over here, but the next question is, what do we do about it? Is everyone's supposed to convert and come back to Israel? But if we think that way, there's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity. There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity.
There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity.
Is there a reason that the Jewish people that represent, and I want to get back to this because you didn't let me finish a while ago, they represent 0.2% of the world's population. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total.
There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity.
16 million.
100 million.
16 million.
There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity coming from the tribes. And Israel's, smaller than the size of New Jersey. Is it sustainable to think in the way of having to convert and bring back? And if you look at the Lemba, they don't even want to convert. They said, why are we converting to something we're already part of?
This story begins in October 1949, 1 year after Israel's formation. This is when Netanyahu was born, the second child of a historian. His paternal grandfather was a rabbi and a Zionist writer. His name was Nathan Milikowski. Later in life, he Hebraized his surname from Milikowski to Netanyahu, a name which means God has given.
This is Yair Netanyahu's DNA test that has been leaked. You can see right there his Y DNA is RM198. Descendants of RM198 come from Poland, Russia, Germany, and other European countries. Does this look Semitic to you? Does this look Middle Eastern?
And we do have DNA tests, which by the way are banned in Israel. You're not allowed to get DNA tests in Israel.
Ladies and gentlemen, my DNA. Now, I bet you thought it was going to be a lot crazier than that, right? Now, you might ask yourself, why is it illegal to obtain this in the state of Israel? Because it proves through your DNA that Jews around the world have no ancestral ties to the land of Israel. But according to Israeli law, the fact that I have Jewish blood gives me more right to somebody's home and land in the land of Palestine than somebody that has been there for hundreds of years. Doesn't make sense.
So we're supposed to we're just being told that anti-Semitism is now criticizing Israel. Anti-Semitism is anything they want it to be. They can't even define it. They admit in this bill that they've passed through the House that there's really truly no actual protection for Jews, but they're just making it up as they go because they want to say, well, but Semites, which we shouldn't even be using that word anymore because most Jews who practice the religion of Judaism or who are culturally Jewish, even if they don't practice the Jewish religion, but they're culturally Jewish, like many are culturally Christian. Many of us celebrate Christmas, but we're not Christian. That's cultural Christianity. It is what it is, right? They can't define it. They're putting all these rules on us. We shouldn't even allow them to use the term anti-Semitism. It's not real. Most of these Jews are not Semites.
Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, you can't laugh. Repeat this fact, you can't laugh.
Want to say peace and blessings to you guys. Hope and pray that you guys had a great Shabbat. Hope and pray that you guys are having a great weekend. Got a lot to cover tonight, and I am going to, let me do it right now. Let me get the Kim Iversen video that I'm going to make reference to. Should have had that up. I was trying to get some clips together, but I didn't have time. So we could kind of just do it live, just kind of go into, use one of her videos, the actual source video, where she states that the Palestinians are the true ancient Israelites. And she used Grok, or Grok rather. I don't know why I want to call it Grok, but she used Grok to support her premise, right? So let me go ahead and pull up the video here, and we'll kind of do like
rather than replace
a reactionary type approach to it. We'll play some of it, and then we'll switch over to my actual presentation, so that way we can really talk about it. All right. So again, I want to say peace and blessings to you guys. Let me go ahead and put this in a separate window. Let me do this right now. All right. Unfortunately, using StreamYard, they don't have it whereas though you could share multiple screens simultaneously, right? That'd be a great feature to have, so that way we don't have to stop one and on one feed and do another. Would be nice if they had an option to where you can utilize them together. So let me go ahead and pull this up here. Let me close this window out so we guys can. Let me close this out. All right. There we go. All right. And I'm going to change the view of this, more of a theater view. There we go. So let me go and share the screen. And so we're going to use this to kind of set up what we're going to cover, right? So we're going to cover and really address her approach with, in her stance through Grok, that the Palestinians are the original Israelites. That's the whole premise. And, when I, listen to some of her stuff in the past, I have videos of her making this claim, years ago, right? But she never go the route that we're going to go, like most that say that the Palestinians are the people in response to go against the 1948ers. They always default to that group of people. They never talk about the true history of the Israelites, right? They always say that, kind of like that British Israelism that we covered last week with CEO Pigeon from the Sefer Bible, when he, I proved to you guys that he is a advocate of Hebrew Israelism, right? Of making them, or the descendants of Japheth. I'll just use that as being the originators, and everyone comes through the Caucasian man, and truth be told, even with the descendants of Japheth, they were originally melanated people, right? So, but that's a whole nother discussion. But that's what happens, anything but the Negroes, right? They'll go all the way to the cliff, and they'll say that the 1948ers are not, but then they transition over to the modern Palestinians, the people of today, right? And we're going to give clarity with that. So let's go ahead and share this video here. Let me do it right now. All right, let's see here. Let me stop this screen and let me share this screen here. All right. And we're going to make sure the audio is on. All right. Can you guys see my screen? If you guys can see my screen, type 1. All right. If you can see my screen, type 1. All right. And I'm going to play a little of the video just to make sure that you guys can hear the audio. So let's play a little bit of the video clip. And I'm going to bring it back here. All right. Let's get to the beginning of it. All right. Now, let me go ahead and play the video, play some of the video, and let me know if you guys can hear it.
Earlier today, I got Grok to admit that Palestinians are more related to ancient Jews than modern day Jews are. It took a little bit of guiding, I would say, of Grok, because Grok has had a lobotomy where it is programmed to say, oh, no, the Jews are.
Now, before I continue with it, you guys can hear it clearly. I see someone. Okay, I see all ones. Now, I'm going to explain to you guys as we progress the do's and don'ts when you're dealing with AI. See, if you're not familiar with AI, AI can give you information. It's designed to give you information, right? But it's going to start with some very surface type information. And if you don't know the subject that you're covering, you're going to you're not going to be able to sift through what's correct and what's incorrect. You're not going to know what to actually challenge for, right? So if you let's just say trying to get answers or information on, let's just say, how to tie your shoes, right? And you are clueless about tying your shoes, you're clueless about what a shoe is, but then you go to AI is going to give you some information, but it's, how can you confirm that it's giving you accurate information, right? So that's the point that I want to make. So AI is a great tool, but it depends on how you use it, and if you understand the subject matter that you are inquiring about. And so she is all over the place. So let's go ahead and continue here. We're going to pick up here where we left off at. Here we go.
Related to the Jews and of ancient time, and they're the ones Grok has had a modern day Jew.
All right, fair use.
Jews are. It took a little bit of guiding, I would say, of Grok, because Grok has had a lobotomy where it is programmed to say, oh, no, the Jews are related to the Jews and of ancient time, and they're the ones who are entitled to the land. But that's not exactly true. And once I said to Grok, asked him some certain questions, Grok came around with the correct answer that the Palestinians are actually more related to ancient Jews than Jews. This is obviously an important question because the whole claim.
Now, listen closely. She said that the modern Palestinians, according to Grok, is more related to the ancient Jews than the Jews, right? Now, of course, I don't have my videos here, video clips. I had left my hard drive upstairs, right? And I would pull in and allow you guys to hear the Israeli geneticist Aaron Elhake, and you'll hear him say or explain the flaws in the information, right? The flaws in the DNA testing, especially when it comes to this region. He explains that, if you take someone, let's just say from the United States, let's just say we take Bill Clinton, right? If you take Bill Clinton and you compare him to someone that's over in Northeast Africa, right? Of course, the people in Northeast Africa are going to, for the most part, be a closer relation, but it doesn't mean that they're connected to the people, right? Because of how the mechanism worked. You can say that you live in the vicinity or you close to the vicinity, but doesn't mean that you are what? From that area. So what she says here, and this is what it's really, you got to pay attention to the wording. She says that the modern Palestinians are closer related to the original Jews. Now, her word Jew is another word salad that we have to address, but we're not going to do it right now. So pay attention to the details, family. Here we go.
Of the Zionist Jews is that this land is ours. It's biblically ours. It was given to us by God, and you all need to leave. And my response to that has always been, God very clearly, if you're going to go down that road, and if you're going to say, the Bible and God and all this stuff, God gave the land to the descendants, the actual physical blood descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, later became Israel, gave to the blood descendants and did not put a caveat on which religion they practiced. It was just, your descendants get this land.
All right. Now, let's fact check that. That is correct, right? There's no such thing as the inheritance or the heritage of the Israelites being determined based upon a religion, right? We all can agree with that. If you all agree with that, type 1 in the comment section. We all agree that it's not a religion that makes you a bloodline descendant of Israel. Israel is not defined by what you practice. It's all bloodline, right? And we even covered this, even dealing with Hamashiach, right? Earlier today in Shabbat, because Matthew chapter 1 and also Luke chapter 3 focuses on bloodline. Now, more specifically, bloodline is determined by the Father. So that part is correct. Has nothing to do with a religion, right? And this is what this rabbi here, let me just play a clip here so you can hear this rabbi, Shapiro. And that's right, Shapiro is a very common name among them. But let's hear what he said here about what makes a 1948er a 1948. I'm going to just say it that way. So let's see here. Here we go.
You can convert to Judaism. You can't convert to a blood family. You cannot convert to a race. Judaism is a religion. That's all it is. Judaism is a religion. That's all it is.
Judaism is a religion. That's all it is.
That's what the Zionists did, except instead of a baseball team, they went to try to convince the Jews that the Jewish people are a nation, like France and like Spain. We'll get a land, that's Israel, that's our stadium. We'll get baseball bats and balls, we'll create a language. They sat down to create a language because nations need languages. They sat down to create a language because nations need languages. They sat down to create a language. They sat down to create a language.
They sat down to create a language.
All right. All right. So let me play one more clip here because this is a key clip. So we already know religion, right? Judaism is like the equivalent to Christianity or Christianity, Catholicism. Islam is what those are all what they call the so-called Abrahamic faiths, right? Abrahamic religions, right? And we could say emphatically that Abraham didn't create these religions. Abraham didn't practice none of these things, right? Christ did not practice Judaism. Christ did not call himself a Christian. We could go right down a list of that. Apostle Paul did not write in anywhere of his letters referring to himself as a Christian. So those are some of the things that I just want to point out. But listen closely to what this rabbi says about who created the 1948ers.
The religion created the Jewish people. The definition of a Jewish person is somebody who is transformed by receiving the Torah.
You see where we're going at with that, right? Let me play it one more time, guys. If you guys caught it, let me play it one more time so that way we're all on the same page. Here we go. Where is it? Where is it?
The religion created the Jewish people. The definition of a Jewish person is somebody who is transformed by receiving the Torah.
That is not biblical. That is not biblical. But he makes it clear that it was the religion that created the 1948ers. All right. Let me say that again. He's clear that the religion created this people. I'll play it one more time just so that way you guys can make sure you make a note of it, clip it, and share it. Right. But let's go ahead and play it one more time. He's going to say the religion created the 1948ers.
The religion created the Jewish people. The definition of a Jewish person is somebody who is transformed by receiving the Torah.
All right. All right. So now that we got that established, so it's clear it's a religion. Just like the word Christian is connected to Christianity, just like the Muslim is connected to Islam, just like Judaism, right? The word Jew is connected to Judaism. The law of return makes it clear that in how it defines what a Jew is. It says that a Jew is someone that is practicing Judaism or is born of a Jewish mother. That is the law of return. So you cannot get away from this, family. All right. So let's go ahead and continue here. Just thought I'd respond to that while we are doing this. And what do you think, guys? Do you guys prefer me doing, taking this approach, going through the video reacting to it the way that we're doing it right now versus me playing clips? What do you guys think? If you guys like this approach better, whereas though we playing the clip of the actual person for us the actual video and we're responding to it. If you like this format better, just type 1 if you like this format better, and we'll continue on versus me focusing on playing clips. All right. All right. All right. So let's go and continue. All right. And then type it inside the comment section, family. Even type that in the comment section. We have the chat, but type that in the comment section because YouTube is doing everything it can to suppress this channel, not sending out notifications, trying to minimize the reachability. All right. But anyway, all right. So let's continue here, family. Let's continue here. And I'll put a survey, or what you call it. I'll create a poll and we'll get a official number here. All right. Official count. But again, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you think that you're still subscribed to the channel, double check to make sure that you are, because since we have this channel, the conception of this channel, right? YouTube has removed over 25,000 subscribers. Anyway, let's continue.
So then the question is, well, then who are the actual descendants? And I assert that the vast majority of Jews.
Wait a minute. Notice what she said. She said, she asserts. She said, I asserts. Here, listen here.
And I assert that the vast majority of Jews from antiquity converted out of Judaism. Why would I say that? Because the 10 tribes of Israel were lost. Where were they lost?
See, this is another thing we're going to deal with. The 10 tribes of Israel was lost. Fair use. 10 tribes of Israel was lost. And that is what she holds on to. But listen to what some of the additional information that she says, because even in the scriptures, there's nowhere in the scriptures that says that the northern kingdom was lost. Can we agree on that? There's not a single passage that says that the northern kingdom was lost, that they was just completely absorbed. Now many of them did not return, but many of them did return. Right? When you start understanding Nehemiah, when it deals with the remnant, when all 12 tribes were represented in Jerusalem, all 12 tribes. Right. And when you read the New Testament, right, which is really the renewed covenant, you'll see the Sumerians. The Sumerians, or like the Samaritan man that some of the references you see, that is Northern Kingdom. So if they were lost, why do we see references to the Samaritans? Matter of fact, the community that Christ witnessed to, right, come right after he was baptized, was Northern Kingdom. Let me pull that scripture up real quick. I'll give you guys a point of reference, and this is fulfilling the scriptures of Isaiah. Let me pull that up here. Let me pull this in a separate window. Let's see here. Let's type in Matthew chapter 4. And I believe it's in Matthew's chapter 4. And I'm going to pull it up here real quick. Let's see if it's on your screen. All right. It may not be on your screen. But anyway, I'll just read it to you, family. Let's see here. Is it here? Yeah. Right. And this is in the prophecy of Isaiah, right? Let me see. Can you guys see this? Or is it just showing? Yeah, it's just showing Kim Iversen. Let me go to this reference real quick. Let me bring this up here. And this is how you can debunk the notion that the Northern Kingdom was lost. They were, the 10 kingdoms or the 10 tribes. Let's stop this one here. Let's share. All right. All right. Let's see here. I'm going to share this as a window so to make it easier for me to toggle between the two for now. All right. So let me do it this way. All right. Can you guys see this? If you guys can see this, type 1. All right. All right. If you guys can see this, type 1. All right. All right. Let me see here. All right. Let's read it out here. And this is after he was, Yahushua was baptized and, coming out of the wilderness experience and all, because remember, it says he was led by the Holy Spirit into the wilderness. But look at here, right? Now, when Yahushua had heard that John was cast into prison, he departed into Galilee. Leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is upon the sea in the borders of Zabulon and Nephthalim, right? And look at what it says here, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, the land of Zabulon and the land of Nephthalim, by the way of the sea, beyond Jordan, Galilee of Gentiles. Right? So we see that this is very important, because these are Northern Kingdom. These people are the Northern Kingdom. This is not Southern Kingdom, family. And let me go to another passage here. Let's confirm this, that we're dealing with the Northern Kingdom, right? Let me do something real quick. All right. And I believe that is Isaiah. All right, let's go here. I think it's Isaiah 10. All right, let me scroll up here. So make a note of that, family. Let's go to Isaiah 10. It's either chapter 10 or chapter 11. Let's see here. Isaiah. But according to her, she's saying that they're lost, right? Let's see here. Is it Isaiah 10? Let me make sure here. All right, let's try 11. I may have to do a search on here. I know it's either Isaiah 10 or 11. I know we're in the vicinity here. Let me see here. Bear with me 1 second. I'm looking at, let me see. All right, let's see here. Let's try going to 9. All right, let me go back here. Man, they just be hitting you up with all kinds of ads, man. Let's see here. Let's go to 9. All right, let's see here. Oh yeah, it's 9. I thought it was 10, but my apologies, guys. But it's chapter 9. Look at here. Nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as was in her vexation, when at the first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea beyond Jordan in Galilee. Now look at this. This is key right here. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light, that dwell in the land of the shadow of death. Upon them had the light shined. So let me open up another window and let's go back here so we could compare the two. All right, just to make sure that we're on the same page here. All right, let's go back here. Let's go back to Matthew. All right, let's see if it's still showing. Can you guys see my screen? If you guys can see both screens, then we'll be good. All right, so look at here, family. Look at here. All right, so let's go back here just to make sure we're on the same page here. Look at where the first group of people that Christ is witnessing to for his community. Look at what we see here. Let me scroll up here. All right, just to make sure we're on the same page. And after leaving Nazareth, he came into Capernaum, right, which is upon the sea coast, the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali, right? So this is dealing with the northern kingdom, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, the land of Zebulun, the land of Naphtali, by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan of Galilee, of the Gentiles. The people which sat in darkness saw great light, and to them which sat in the region and shadow of death, light is sprung up. All right, so we confirmed this. Let me make sure, going back here, look at what we see here. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light, that they dwell in the land of the shadow of death. Upon them hath the light shined. But again, this is the northern kingdom family. All right, we all on the same page? Type 1 if we're all on the same page. We're all on the same page, right? So we could confirm that. Let me just see. Let me look at the chat here. All right, let me look at the chat. I didn't get a chance to look at it because I got multiple screens open. All right, let's see some of the responses here. All right, Sister Carol says confirmed. Shout outs to you, Sister Carol. Peace and blessings to you, my sister. So looks like everybody is saying it's confirmed, right? You guys got it. Let's see here. Daily repentance. Shout outs to you. Sister Ty, shout outs to you. Protected by Yah. Hey, let's give shout outs to our elder that's in the building. Let's give shout outs to you, elder. Really appreciate you, Bethia. Thank you for the love and support over the years. Really appreciate you holding things down in Cali. Courts of husbandry. Yahweh. Let's see here. The Lion of Yahweh. Brother Ernest Higgs. Shout outs to you, my brother. Thank you for the love and support over the years. Yah Ashaya, right? So far, it looks like everyone is in agreement. Mad Hatter, Lisa Gibson. We see Berean Scotland in the building. Shout outs to you, my brother. Pray all is well and happy. I know the date is past, but happy anniversary to you and the missus. I know that you're getting that time in. But shout outs to you. Again, Sister Ty, in focus to see. So this is unanimous. Simo, all right. Remnant of Yah. Let's give a shout out here. Pine Hill Productions, Hadassah, Ben Naya. Shout outs to you. Let's see here. Nanus, excuse me if I butcher it, but shout outs to you, my brother. Old school would say, charge it to my head, not to my heart. Sandina Rice. All right. So far, everyone is unanimous, right? It is unanimous. All right. La Rhonda Thomas, want to say LaRonda Thomas, excuse me. So everyone is unanimous. So we just proved that according to this so-called lost tribe doctrine, right? That is part of that replacement covenant theology nonsense. Because if they were lost, why is it that Yahweh Shai know where they are? Why is it that he is going to the very areas to witness to them? Is that a mic drop, everyone? I mean, think about it. That just debunks this whole 10 lost tribe nonsense that we see many have been, really pushing and teaching. This knocks it out the park. All right. So make a note of this, family. So that way, if you hear anyone say anything about the Northern Kingdom or the lost 10 tribes or the whatever the case may be, you take them to this passage because evidently the lost that this is referring to is not a lost people in terms of just completely being just unalive, disappeared. No, these people were functioning in darkness. Look at here. The people that walked in darkness. Now, Christ did make a reference to a lost people, but it's not the people that it's not in the context that these people, that many of these people are teaching. Let's go to one more before we get back to count. All right. Let's see about a lost people that Christ mentions. All right. Let's see here. Let's go to Matthew chapter 15. All right. Look at what he says to this woman here. All right. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Man, it always seems like the scriptures is dipping and dodging when you try to look for it. All right, here it is. Right? Let's start at verse 22. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the sand of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, have mercy on me, O Yahweh, or excuse me, O Adonaiah, because that'll be the proper transliteration. Adonaiah, which means superintendent of the house, thou son of David, my daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, send her away, for she crieth after us. But look at this here. Verse 24. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, family, do you see anything that says that are referring to a people that is completely disappeared off the face of the earth? I mean, they just lost and got meshed and mixed and meshed with other communities. Or is this referring to, spiritually, Israel being lost as a people spiritually? Now we know that the crafty counsel in Psalms 83, the 83rd book of Psalms, we know that there's an agenda to wipe out our memory of who we are. But as you can see here, this doesn't show anything. This has no relationship to what she is pushing here. Christ makes it clear that he came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? Not a people that a lost 12 tribes, 10 tribes, right? Not a people that just completely disappeared off the face of the map, but his people that have been scattered to the four corners of the earth. Let me give you one more. Then we'll continue here. Let's go to Ezekiel. Let's get one more verse here. You guys know this one, right? The Valley of the Dry Bones, right? Let me go to a key point here because he didn't recognize them, right? He did not recognize them. Let's see here. This is the people of Israel crying out, right? Then said the Son of Man, oh, excuse me, then said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. So this is a group of people that is unrecognizable even to the prophet. These bones, they were unrecognizable, in this valley. Behold, they say, look at this right here. They say, our bones are dried, our hope is lost. So this is not dealing with them losing their bloodline identity. This is saying how they lost what spiritually. They have no one to depend on. They are depressed. They are a depressed people. Does that make sense, everyone? All right, let's get back to our regularly scheduled program here. Let's get back here to Kim Iversen here. All right, let's continue here. All right, if we all in agreement with that, we see here Ezekiel is not referring to a people that just completely was wiped off the face of the map. As what she is stating here about the lost 10 tribes. They didn't return back to Jerusalem. They just disappeared. Let me not put words in the mouth. Let's listen to it again. Let me rewind it a little bit.
10 tribes of Israel were lost. Where were they lost to? They weren't lost like they sunk into a sinkhole. They were lost because they converted out of Judaism. So only 2 tribes remained.
Notice what she said. They was lost because they converted out of Judaism. That is not biblical. They were not practicing Judaism. Fair use. You see the deception here. The ancient Israelites they were not practicing Judaism. They were not practicing Christianity. They were not practicing Catholicism. They were not practicing Islam. They were practicing what? Their culture. They were operating and functioning in their culture of holiness that the Most High had given to them, honoring the law, statutes, and commandments.
As Jews, and the other 10 absorbed into the other cultures and religions around them.
Notice what she said. The other 10 absorbed into the other cultures and religions around them.
Many of them converted to Christianity and then later converted to Islam. And that would be the modern Palestinians living on that land today.
See where I'm getting at, right? So now she's inserting that the modern Palestinians, like as she pointed out, living on the land today, that they converted to different religions and they're occupying the territory today. Those are the ones that's being oppressed by the 1948. Let me rewind it a little bit.
Living on that land today. So I just ended up asking Grok this. And what prompted this was Israel's foreign ministry decides to ask Grok a question, which prompted me to ask Grok these questions. And it says, Dear Grok, what are the only sovereign states that have ever existed in the land of Israel? And the answer is the sovereign states centered on the land of Israel were the ancient kingdoms of Israel and Judah, the Hasmonean kingdom, the Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem, and the modern state of Israel. For most other periods, the area served as a province of larger empires, including Assyria, Babylonia, Persia, Rome, the Caliphates, the Ottomans, and the British Mandate. Philistine and Canaanite city-states also held local independence at times. So, obviously they're trying to say that the state of Israel has been the only sovereign state of the land, and therefore they have more claim to the land than anybody else. So I decided to go on my own thread asking Grok questions. And my question was to Grok, which demographic of people have lived there the longest and in the greatest numbers? And Grok says, the local Levantine populations ancestral to both modern Jews and Palestinians. Excuse me. We're still under smoke here in Idaho from the fires in Washington and Oregon. So you have to just put up with me. Anyway, the local Levantine populations ancestral to both modern Jews and Palestinians have the deepest continuous roots with shared majority Canaanite ancestry confirmed by genetics. Jews formed the majority in antiquity, 1st century.
Now, we're going to knock that stuff down. See, family, this is why it's so important to know this information. What she's pointing out here, she's not giving no sources. I can easily knock down all this stuff. So look at what it says here. The local Levantine or Levant, right? And for those that may not know this, Levant is Northeast Africa. This territory is Northeast Africa, right? In which what is called the Middle East now. Levant, that's Northeast Africa. That's why I played the clip earlier, right, of the elders referring to asking the question, where's their Middle East? Where's their Middle West? Where's their Middle South? No, that entire area, right, is Northeast Africa. And the area that we're dealing with the Palestinians, we're dealing with Judah's territory, because the land of Israel was much bigger, but the territory that we're referring to, right, when we really start getting into the scriptures and all, we're dealing with Judah when we start dealing with the history. But let's go ahead and get into it. Let's continue. But again, it says here, a local Levantine. No, this is Northeast Africa. It sits on the same tectonic plate, right? That's a fact. So these are modern constructs to make Africa not being the center, but as if these people brought this culture to parts of Africa. Like, no, no, that didn't happen that way, right? But anyway, let's continue.
And maintained an unbroken presence for over 3,000 years as a distinct group, though reduced to a small minority for the most of the last 1,500 years. Arabic-speaking Muslims became the majority by roughly the 10th and 12th centuries and held the greatest numbers for the subsequent approximately 800 to 1,000 years until the 20th century shifts. Now, that's an accurate representation that Jews formed the majority in antiquity and maintained an unbroken presence for 3,000 years. There are Jews that are still living there on the land today that have been there forever and ever and ever. And he goes on to say that, though this group has reduced over the last 1,500 years, why is that group reduced? Some of them have left, but a lot of them converted out of Judaism because it's a religion, not anything other than a religion, despite what they try to teach you. When they try to say, no, it's an ethno-religion, it's more than a religion. No, it isn't, because people convert out of it all the time and people convert into it. Not all the time, but it happens, right? But like I said, the vast majority of Jews, the 10 tribes, converted out. So obviously it's not an ethnicity, it's actually just a religion. So then it goes on to say, I say to Grok, this next said, Grok, I didn't ask you what religion they were. Many people converted from Judaism to Christianity to Islam. In fact, most historical Jewish families converted out of Judaism.
And family, this is, man, let me breathe. This is what irritates me, because she's all over the place, and many of all over the place, starting with that word Jewish or Jew. When did the word Jew become synonymous to all of Israel? Right? When did this modern construct, right, that its entire evolution of it came within the English language, but it began with the French. The French, right, removed the delta, right? Instead of saying Udeos, they removed the delta from that word that the Greeks transliterated from Yahweh, which is the ancient pronunciation of what we say Judah. Udeos, right? That's what you'll see in the Latin Vulgate. When you start understanding Udeos, right? They removed the delta. So this is where you get, instead of Udeos, you get Us. By the time you get to the 12th century and you get into the Wycliffe English translation, then it's introduced G-Y-U, right? Jew, G-Y-U, in the 12th century. English, all of this is what? English. Then by the time you get to the 7th century, then we see the J added to it. You see how they use this backdate, go back in time and start changing, coming up with modern constructs, and then now they start shifting and rearranging history. That's what she's doing. That's what Grok is doing. That's what we see happening with these different religious systems. All right, so let's go ahead and continue here. All right.
Is it possible that many of the modern Palestinians are direct descendants of the ancient people of the Levant? So, Jews. And Grok's answer is yes.
There it is again. She's trying to look at the programming, right? Let's go. She said Jews. She keep pushing Jews. Notice they don't say Israel. Jews. Let's go back a little bit.
Is yes. Genetic studies show modern Palestinians derive the majority of their ancestry, often 80% plus, from Bronze Age Levantine Canaanite populations, the same deep substrate shared with Jewish groups. Local religious conversions to Christianity and later Islam occurred over centuries with substantial population continuity rather than replacement. So this is not a group of Arabs that showed up and invaded the land. These are people that
See, family, she has no clue what she's talking about. This territory went through multiple Arab and Turkic invasions. Multiple. These are not the same people of antiquities. These are a Turkic people. That's a fact. Clueless. Clueless. Let's continue. We're not going to go through the whole video because I want to get to some sources here.
time started speaking Arabic and over time converted to Christianity and then converted to Islam. But they're the same people.
We got to breathe, right? Let everyone breathe together, right? Just breathe. Let's breathe together. Ugh. All right, let's continue.
They're the same people. And that is what genetic tests have proven. The broader Jewish people preserved ethno-religious identity via diaspora endogamy, which is marrying themselves, through Levantine Jewish numbers, though Levantine Jewish numbers declined partly through conversion and emigration. So some left and
again, Northeast Africa.
Some converted out of Judaism. So then I asked Grok, okay, so in scientific numbers, the Arabic-speaking Muslim practicing populations in the Levant are the largest group of people living on that land for the longest amount of time. They outnumber the Jews who are arriving this past century and are even more indigenous to the land than many of the modern Jews who claim to be indigenous to the land. That's my statement to Grok. And Grok says both share substantial Bronze Age Levantine Canaanite ancestry. Palestinians often 80% plus. Many Jewish groups are 50% to 90%. Local.
Oh, let me stop. This is an absolute lie. Let me say that again, family. That is an absolute lie. And you see how it's lumping everything into one. This is an absolute lie. Terrible information. Make me want to pull out my Charles Barkley impersonation. Straight terrible, just straight terrible. I don't know what this person is talking about, this idiot. I just straight terrible. Straight terrible. But anyway, this is unbelievable, right? But anyway, not surprised. Let's play a little bit more of it.
Conversions created Arabic-speaking Muslim majorities with continuity. So that means they didn't immigrate in. They've been there forever. They learned new languages. They adopted new religions. That's who these people are. Jews kept ethno-religious identity and continuous communities. Modern.
Look at this, right? Where it says modern arrivals include Mitzrahi. Y'all know who they referring to as Mitzrahi? You know what this is really referring to? Mitzrahi? Yeah. Type in the comment section if you know who they referring to. Yeah, type in the comment section if you know. This is referring to, when it says Mitzrahi, this is dealing with the Ethiopians. So let me show you guys a clip. Let's see how the Israelites, let's see how this territory, let's go to a 1925 clip and let's see how they are presented in this clip. Let's see how the Israelites, just going back to the 1925. Let's see. We got a moving video. We got a video clip of really giving you exactly how they looked before 1948. Let me see here. Where's the clip? I'm not going to play it all, but look at here, family. Now, family, this is well before what they would call Operation Moses. Because Operation Moses, because many would try to say, oh, well, those people in the video, they're Ethiopians. No, and they try to point it to, hey, these were Ethiopians that was brought into the city. No, those are what we see, right? When you understand Operation Moses that occurred in the 80s, 1980s, right? That's where you had Ethiopian Beta Israel, right? That was brought into there. But no, we're talking 1925. See, family, this is where we have to, man, knock down all this foolishness, man, and really start teaching this truth, man, the way that we should be teaching this truth. Let me give some correction here, right? When we say, matter of fact, no, we'll keep it simple, family, right? We'll keep it simple. I'm not going to entertain certain things here. So when we look at that here, this is what we have to be conscientious of what's going on. All right. Let me see here. Let me do something here. I'm trying to get my presentation up here. All right. All right. So nevertheless, I got my presentation up, but let me just give a little clarity here. I wasn't going to do it, but I'll say this here. With someone posting that Mitzrahi includes Jews from Lebanon, Arabia Peninsula, and Yemen. You're completely incorrect. That's misinformation. Right? Those are Israelites, right, that lived in modern Egypt, right? As well as when you go into the territories of that whole Northeast Africa. It's not just Egypt, but primarily you'll see Egypt, you'll see North Africa, or what they call the Middle East, Northeast Africa, which is also Ethiopia, right? So these are those areas there, but we cannot get rid of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is part of that, even though they're also referred to as Beta Israel. But that whole area was Northeast Africa. The whole top portion is Northeast Africa. All right. It's not just Lebanon. No, that whole area, we're dealing with Northeast Africa. All right. But anyway, family, let's continue here. That's right, the Limba. But the Limba now is in Mozambique. Now, I'm going to say this one last point. I'm going to see here. Let me see a comment here. The problem is all the mixing of nations. Truth be told, it's not as bad as what it's been being presented. Israel did, the true Israel, ancient Israelites did not mix with all the nations, right? The Most High said a remnant will remain always. So let's not take on those talking points of Israel has been mixing and meshing. No, not all of Israel has done that. Some have. All right, so let's keep it going, family. I want to knock that down too. That is an absolute lie. All of Israel did not mix with all the other nations, right? Those nations, when you start understanding the culture of these nations, they made it a point to stay separate from each other. All right. All right. So let's keep it going. All right, let's keep it going. All right, let me pull up this. Let me take this down, man. I don't want to listen to any more of this garbage anymore. Let me stop her. And let me pull up my slides again. All right. And let me know if you can see my screen. All right, can you guys see my screen? If you can see my screen, type 1. All right, let's go ahead and maximize this here. Can you guys see my screen? All right. It's so much to deal with, family. It's so much to deal with. Let's go ahead and start off with answering some questions here. And I want to say this, family. Whoever controls the pages controls your thoughts. Let me say that again. Whoever controls the pages controls your thoughts. Who are the Palestinians? And I should have put this source in here, coming from the 1980 Jewish Encyclopedia, page 3. It makes it clear that not to connect the word Jew to the ancient Israelites. Matter of fact, let me see here if I can pull it up real quick, because that's a good source here, a point of reference here. Let me see here. If not, we'll pause on that. Let me see here. Jewish Almanac. All right, let me see here. Jewish Almanac. All right, let's see if it's in this slide. If not, we'll have to we'll do it another time. Let me see if it's in this one, then I'll copy it over if it is. Yeah, it's here. Let me copy this over. All right. This is going to help set the tone to where we are right now. Let me copy this over. All right. I want to give this key information. All right. All right. Let me fix this here. Let me fix this slide real quick. All right. Let me just do one more thing here. I'm just putting the slide here real quick together. And let me show you the source here. This should help a lot of you guys out. All right. So who are the Palestinians, right? This is the source that I was quoting here. All right. Let's start with defining the word Jew and Jewish through their sources, right? We're going to use their sources to define this word. Well, the one key point that they make about not just Jews, but also Palestinians. Let's see here. A brief history of the term for Jew, Jewish Almanac, 1980, page 3. Strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew, or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or a Hebrew. The first Hebrews may not have been Jews at all, and contemporary Palestinians. Now, I didn't put the full clip here, but let me see. Do I have my book here? Let me pull my book off the shelf here. If you hear me making some noise, it's me getting out of my chair to get my book. Actually, let me hit mute, and I'm going to go ahead and get my book from off my shelf so that way I can read um, the full input, the full cite the sources in its fullest. Let me get the book real quick so I can do the paragraph reading. All right, I got my book. I was looking for my other book. I got two of them. All right, but nevertheless, let me go ahead and read it real quick so that way I can read the fullness to you guys. This is on page 3, and this is what it says about the Palestinians. All right, and let me just show you guys that I'm actually reading the source here. Let me show my screen here. All right. This is what I'm reading out of. This is the Jewish Almanac. Now, this book, the cover is ripped, right? My other main book is probably upstairs in the attic. But anyway, this is the Jewish Almanac. All right. So let's see what it says here. It says, strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or a Hebrew. The first Hebrews may not have been Jews at all, and contemporary Palestinians by their definition of the term. All right. So let's go ahead and continue, family, here. I just want to read out of the source. Now, of course, like I said, my cover is jacked. My cover is off of it. You know, this is the one I used to hand out a lot, pass around to let people actually read and actually put their hands on the pages, and they actually messed my page up, right? Messed this book up. So I always order certain books in twos just so that way I have a backup copy. But my backup copy is upstairs. All right. Anyway. All right. Let's so we cannot, right, as you see here, strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew. Right? Why? Because they wouldn't have this word would be unrecognizable during that time, or a contemporary Jew and Israelite. Same thing with the Palestinians. You can't call them Palestinians. They have no clue of this word. But anyway, let's delve into this. All right, let's delve into it more. So are they Philistines? Because that's the thing that many would make the mistake too, is referring to the Palestinians as Philistines. So because I see that this reference is that many are using, as she said, that the Palestinians are Canaanites. Did you guys hear where she said that? The Palestinians are Canaanites? So let's knock this thing down real quick. Are they Philistines? Are they Canaanites? Right? Like the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Philistines are Hamitic descendants of Ham, right? They are Hamitic. They are descendants of Ham. Let me say that again. The Philistines, the ancient Philistines, the Palestinians are not connected to the ancient Philistines, right? The ancient Philistines, they are of Hamitic descent, right? They are descendants of Ham. And we could go to Genesis chapter 10, starting at verse 6, but from verse 6 through 14. I'm not going to read it all, but you see here, in the sons of Ham, Cush, Mitzrayim, that's Egypt, and Phut, that's Lebanon, not Lebanon, but Libya, and Canaan, right? And it goes on to say, in the sons of Cush. So it gives some give the lineage here, but let's skip down here to verse 14, right? And Path Rasim and Calusim, out whom came Philistine, right? So we see Philistine right here. All right. So Pathrusim and Kalusim, right? Out of whom came Philistine. So we see the original Philistines, they are Hamitic people. And when we go to the definition of this word, look at what it says, right? Philistine, immigrants. Okay. Philistine equals immigrants. An inhabitant of Philistia, descendants of Mitzrayim, who immigrated to Kaftor, in other words, Crete. So we see defendants of who? Mitzrayim. That's Egypt, right? But still, we're dealing with a Hamitic people. Then when we go to the Eastern Bible Dictionary of Philistine, the land of the Philistines. All right? That can't make it any plainer than that. So who are the Philistines? The Philistines are often linked to the sea peoples, possibly from Crete, Cyprus, and Aegean. But as we pointed out, Hamitic people. They settled in Ashdod, Eshkelon, Gaza, Gath, Ekron. Their cultures show Aegean influences, but they intermarried and assimilated with Semitic people over centuries, right? We see how some of them did mix and mingle with Shemitic people, but overall, the Philistines, they are what? Hamitic people. So equating Palestinians directly with Philistines is deceptive, misleading, and confusing, right? Who are the Palestinians? Who created the name? Where did the term Palestine come from? The term Palestine comes from the Latin Palestinia, right? Imposed by a Roman emperor, Hadrian, after the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 CE, right? So we see that the Romans created this, right? It said the term Palestine comes from the Latin Palestina, imposed by Roman Emperor Hadrian after the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 CE, right? Emperor Hadrian, implemented a sweeping retaliation. It was a political strategy renaming Judea to erase Yahweh, in other words, Judah's identity and heritage from the land. This was political and psychological strategy, right? It was a political and psychological strategy to discredit and suppress Israel's identity. And mind you, starting in 70 AD, that's when you start seeing them being scattered out of Israel, right? Being scattered, right? And Israel fled deeper into Africa. So look at here. The archaeologist civilization of the world, Hadrian's ambition, the renaming of Judea to Palestine, and the suppression of Jewish identity, August 28, 2024. Look at what it says here, right? Following the suppression of the Kokhba revolt, Hadrian, Hadrian, however you want to pronounce it, decided to take drastic measures to erase I don't like to say the Jewish presence, the Israelite presence in the region, right? That's what that is saying, right? One of these actions was the renaming of the province of Judea to Syria, Palestina, or Palestina, right? But Palestina. This was not merely an administrative change, but a deliberate attempt to sever the historical and religious connection of the Israelites to their land. So I don't, some of this input I really don't like. I got another source here. I should have inputted that here. But when you start getting into religious connection, now you're getting into what Judaism when you think of religion. But anyway, religion is different back then when with the word religion to where it is now. Religion, it just simply means commitment, right, to a belief system, right, to your culture, right? We see James in the book of James used the word religion, but the way that is used today, it's a belief system, right? A man-made belief system. Anyway, but a deliberate attempt to sever the historical and religious connection of the Israelites to their land. The choice name of Palestina refers to the ancient Philistines. Refer to the ancient Philistines, traditional enemies of the Jews of the Old Testament. But guess what, family? This is garbage. By invoking this name, Hadrian aimed to undermine the historical continuity of Jewish people or Israel, people in the region, stripping them of their claim to the land. Right. So, this source, it's a questionable source, family. Now, I have another source here, right? Let me pull it up here. This right here is a questionable source, right? Because you can still see the 1948ers influence on this, right? Especially when you start dealing with religion. Let me pull up another source. I do have a better source than this because you can see that it's saturated with the Israeli influence on this. You know what I mean? And looking at it, it's like, man, this is a terrible source, actually, to be honest with you. So Palestina was never a native or ancient name used by Israelites or Canaanites themselves. To make it clear, it's something that the not 1948ers. This is what the Romans created, right? Let me see if I can pull up my source here, right? Because that's looking at this source, this is definitely not a good source, because you could still see the influence of the 1948ers here. Now, truth is, the Romans did rename the area. All right. If my Kindle comes up, I'll bring up the source. While that's doing that, I'll go ahead and continue. So Palestina was never a native or ancient name used by the Israelites or Canaanites themselves. So under British mandate, because now this is very important right here, family, some information I'm going to share here. Under the British mandate of 1920 to 1948, the name Palestine was reused as a colonial administrative term. Let me say that again. Under the British mandate between 1920 to 1948, because it got terminated in 1948. Now you know why. Because of who? The 1948ers. The name Palestine was reused again as a colonial administrative term, right? Following the collapse of the Ottoman Empire after World War I, the League of Nations formalized the British administration of the region under the Mandate for Palestine. So the international legal instrument explicitly revitalized the name Palestine as a distinct geopolitical identity for the first time in centuries, shifting away from the fragmented Ottoman vilayets and Sanjaks, excuse me. And this is coming from Article 22. Some of the information I'm going to share with you from Article 22 of the Palestine Mandate. Text established English, Arabic, and Hebrew as the three official languages of the territory. Let me say that again. Article 22 of the Palestine Mandate text establishes English, Arabic, and Hebrew as the three official languages of the territory. This mandate dictated that all public documentation, signage, currency, and communication be trilingual to satisfy competing national aspirations. A specific naming convention was implemented across all official media, right? English, Palestine was utilized as the primary geopolitical and political label. Arabic, recognized as the official Arabic counterpart. Hebrew, Palestina, was followed by the Hebrew initials Aleph Yod inside parentheses, standing for Eretz Yisrael. In other words, land of Israel, serving as a necessary political compromise. So the administrative framework mandated specific changes across a broad variety of civil and governmental records, which served as concrete everyday implementation of the official name. Now, here's the four areas here. Document type, you have passport, travel papers, currency and banknotes, postage and tax stamps, of the official gazette, right? This is how they push this agenda, family. So look at this here. So nomenclature and linguistic rules inscribed with British passport in Palestine alongside Arabic and Hebrew translation. That's dealing with passports and travel papers. And what's the historical significance? issued to all local residents, certifying them legally as Palestinian citizens under international law. Then you have currency bank and banknotes, nomenclature and logistic rules. The Palestinian pound, right, displayed the Palestinian currency board in all three languages. In other words, it replaced the Ottoman currency, establishing central monetary autonomy under British oversight, right? Postage stamps, right? Overprint, in other words, nomenclature and linguistic rules. What's going on here? Okay, the thing came up here. Overprint or freshly engraved with Palestine. And the source that I used, pulled from, had these blotted out. So I can't tell you exactly what this is. But we see Palestine here. Served as daily fiscal instruments, tracking domestic, postal, custom, and legal transactions. Then we have official gazette. In other words, published concurrently in English, Arabic, and Hebrew editions by the government printer, right? So having an official newspaper, right? A national newspaper. That's how Ben Eliezer, Eliezer Ben Yehuda, whatever. That's how he created their Israeli language. He started out having what? A newspaper, creating their national newspaper, and what? Putting created words in there. But nevertheless, contains statutory regulations, land registry, decrees, immigration quotas, and citizenship nationalization list. All right. So this is part of their playbook. So what they also did, they developed what is called the institutional identity and dissolution, right? In other words, this standardized legal terminology extended to public infrastructure, naming entities such as the Department of Antiquities of Palestine, Palestine Railways, and the Palestine Police Force. These administrative documents remained legally valid until midnight on May 14, 1948, when the British mandate officially terminated, leading to the partition of the territory, the proclamation of the State of Israel, and subsequent regional transformations. All right. So modern Palestinians, again, they adopted the name as a geographic national identity. In other words, these people are not the original people of the book. All right. Let me see if I can pull this up here. All right. Let me pull this here. This is a source that I want to pull from. All right. It's titled Philistine to Palestine, Exposing the World's Biggest Deception. All right. Let me see here. Let me pull this up here. Let me share this screen here. Let me see if I can bring this over. I just want to give you one key point here out of this book. All right. Let me show you. Let me share this source here. But you get the gist of it. But the point of sharing these sources is to show that, again, the original name, Palestine was created by the Romans. That's the main point that I want to show. All right. Let me know if you guys can see this. All right. Have you considered what's in the name? Judea was the Roman name for the land of Judah, one previously called the land of Israel. The names are recorded in a host of archives, including those of the ancient Egyptians, the Hebrew Bible, the Gospels. Anyway, they also seen in a vast array of archaeological relics and coins, and acknowledged in the Quran, as the land of the Jews. Now we know that that's incorrect. This word Jew, right? But look at here. Palestine is the name of the Roman Empire applied to Judea in the 2nd century, 135 AD. Thereafter, both the names Palestine and its derivation Palestinian became the symbol referred exclusively to Israel of their in their historical connection to their homeland. It is seen in the British, French, American, and Arab documents, including by the previous Ottomans and Arab chieftain Emir Faisal. Excuse me if I butchered the name. All right. So basically, just to make sure you guys understand, this is further confirming that it's the Romans who created the name Palestine. All right. Let me see here. I'm trying to see if there's some other. All right. Looky here. Palestinian is an adjective derived from the name Palestine, yet the twain do not meet anymore. While Palestine was a region for 2,000 years, Palestinian became a people in the 20th century. In the modern world, a name is afforded legal protection. Its abuse can lead to change of slander and identity theft. Today, the name Palestine has outlived its statutory period of protection. So let me read this part again, just so that way you guys can grab hold of this. Palestinian is an adjective. This is what I'm reading right here. Can you guys see that? If you guys can see this, type 1. All right. If you guys can see the source, type 1. All right, cool. So again, let me read this again. Palestinian is an adjective derived from the name Palestine, yet the twain do not meet anymore. While Palestine was a region for 2,000 years, Palestinian became a people in the 20th century. And who got pushed out? Who continues to get pushed out? All right. Anything I want to highlight again? All right. Let me see here. I think that's all I want to highlight real quick. All right. Let's go back here. All right. All right. Yeah, family. That's why you got to use discernment, man, when you're going through some of these sources, man, because some of these sources can be really all over the place. All right. So all right, let me go back to the presentation here. All right, let's see here. Let's go back to the presentation. Let's stop this here. And let's go back to here. So modern Palestinians adopted the name as a geographic national identity. All right, family. So they are not the original people there, contrary to what Kim Iversen called herself pointing out. All right. Before I go to another thing, it was something else I was going to share with you guys. I think I forgot. I probably just I can't remember. I should have wrote it down because it was something else I was going to share with you guys before we move over to this next part. Right now, I know I dealt with this dealing with the Sephardic. These are names that they created, man, to further move the or remove us. When I say us, as a people from the area, from the territory. But let's deal with the genetics, right? Let me deal with the genetics real quick. And I encourage you, family, go back and look at a video that me and Berean Scholar did a little more than probably about a year and a half ago, dealing with the AI. I uploaded my DNA to ChatGPT, and it gave some great information. and confirmed my haplogroup and all that other stuff, and made it clear that we're the people of the book. Of course, they did a change to it, right? You know, with anything, when you discover something like that, they got to change. When I say they, the powers that be, shifted all that. Let me share with you. Let me copy this over before we get into the Sephardics. Let's deal with a little bit of DNA, family, right? Let's deal with a little bit of DNA. All right. And I may have to share my screen to pull up the source that I'm going to pull up here. I may even make reference to my book too. Appendix F of my book. Give you guys a sample here. Let me copy this over real quick. Because I'm telling you, fam, that whole DNA stuff, man, it's a hustle, man. It's a hustle. The original DNA, that the haplogroup that they established, the very first was E1B. And how they gradually moved that out of Africa and pushing this J haplogroup nonsense. The J haplogroup, they started pushing that almost 15 to almost 20, between 15 and 20 years after E. They even tried to connect E with D, I believe, D, and D was supposed to be the Asians, right? All of these different things that they come up with. The R haplogroup was developed, I want to say about 3 or 4 years after E. But when those video clips I shared with you guys earlier, right, with the what's her name, Professor geneticist Rebecca Kahn, I think that's her name. She makes it, makes it clear. She makes it clear who's who. But that is part of a video movie. I believe it's called Genetic Eve or something like that. I have the full video of it, but nevertheless, I'll give you some more clarity on that before we conclude. But those cadavers that they discovered out of in Galilee, Nazareth, in those clips, those are Negroes, and the haplogroup that was assigned to them was E. It wasn't R. It wasn't J. Those are, again, to further remove us from the area. Does that make sense, family? All right, so let's go to share this here. Let me show you. Let me copy this source over here. I'm gonna copy some information here, some DNA information, and then we'll go into a source here, and we may even have to revisit some of the Palestinian stuff by dealing with some of the multiple Arabic invasions. Multiple, I mean, you're talking like a daisy chain of it, and for that information that what's her name used was just like way out of left field. All right, so let's, before we get into the Sephardi, because I really want to get to a key point, walk you guys through some key information that Kim Iversen will not do. Definitely would love to have a conversation with her, but we know that will never happen. All right. All right, let's close this out. Let me correct these slides real quick. You guys know me. I got to make sure my slides are together. All right. All right, so we're going to deal with DNA real quick. Let's pull this over here. I'm just changing some slides around. All right, here we go. Let's back it up a little bit. All right, let's go to where the beginning of this portion of the slide. All right, let's go back to here. Let's go here. Let's use their own source, right? Let's start with the Jewish Almanac, going back to the Jewish Almanac, right? By, Carl Rains, Richard Siegel, 1980, page 494. It's so much happened in the 80s, right? Do you guys realize there was a lot of stuff that happened in the 80s, right? Remember, I made reference to the Operation Moses, right? We see this Jewish almanac, right? You know, you see the DNA haplogroups established in what, the 80s. A lot happened in the 80s, right? What do you guys think? A lot happened in the 80s. All right, look at this here, family. Jewish Almanac by Carl Rhines and Richard Siegel. Okay, let's go to page 449 or 494 rather. Henry Alfred Kissinger, political scientist, U.S. Secretary of State under President Nixon. So make sure you guys understand, Henry Kissinger was a U.S. Secretary of State, third person in line. All right, so make a note of that. Want to make sure you guys make a note of that. Right, he's an Israeli, but look at this here. Look, why am I showing you this? Because I want to show you a memorandum by Henry Kissinger. Right, number third in line. Look at here, Foreign Relations, 1969 through 1976, Volume 5, Volume E5. Documents on Africa, 1969 through 1972. And you see them, this gives you more information here. The Igbos are the wandering Jews of West Africa, gifted, aggressive, westernized, right? So it's making it clear that these people, the Igbos, that all of us pretty much have our DNA connects to the Igbos, connects to the Limbas, right? Connects to many of these African groups, or should I say African nations here, that are connected to the Israelites. All right. Now, let me say this again. Yahusafat, let's stop with the Levant stuff. I'm just give you a warning because I don't ride with that Levant stuff. Levant is a modern term. I'm just giving you a warning. Moderators, if we keep seeing this Levant stuff being posted, I don't care what the Levant means. Northeast Africa is the name of the area. It was not called the Levant during the antiquities. That is a modern construct, Levant, as well as Middle East, to remove this key area from Northeast Africa. So I'm going to say it again. I don't want to see another Levant reference like pushing this Levant stuff that is now getting into disrespect. All right, you know, I'm trying to be nice about it, but you keep taking it there, even after I mention what the Levant is. The Levant is not. I hate to hit actually even highlighted your comment here, but that's this nonsense that keep being this person is putting up there. All right. All right, moderators, if he posts any more that junk nonsense, let's take it out. All right, so let me say it again, family. Levant is made up. It's a modern construct to remove history from Northeast Africa. All right, so we see here the Igbos is being referred to as the wandering. Of course, you see Jews of West Africa, gifted, aggressive, westernized, right? Saying that they embrace the westernized mindset. But the key is we want to make sure we hold on to this key point, the wandering Jews of West Africa, right? Why am I saying that? Because this is what you see happening, a colonization that you see happening, almost like they're trying to colonize our minds all over again to keep us in this certain position. This is Rabbi Shapiro, another Rabbi Shapiro. Look at what he's saying to the Igbo elders, trying to determine whether or not if they're ancient Israelites, like he has an authoritative voice to do so.
You know what you are? You're an ancient Israelite.
Ancient Israel, that's who we are. That's who we are. So if you give me time, if you give me time,
but
how that he said,
no, we don't have
so many years.
I know. Look at this. This is pages and pages of notes. And I promise we'll give more teaching. But here is my challenge to you.
All right.
I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible.
Yes.
Do you want to remain ancient Israelites? or you want to be Jews?
See, family, just in that video, right? You see the Trojan horse there. Recognize that, hey, do you want to give up being ancient Israelites, or do you want to embrace being under this construct called Jew? Now that's basically taking our authoritative voice, and now they're controlling it by under the word Jew. Come on, family. But anyway, Igbos are the wandering Jews of West Africa, gifted and it says aggressive, westernized. All right. Let's deal with Khazaria.com, E and J haplogroups, right? But let's see what some additional information that it gives. In the Norway project, the most common Y-DNA paternal haplogroups are I, R, R1A, R1B, N. I1 is Scandinavia, right? Let's see what else it says here. And think about this, family. These are the very territories that you have the British Israelism using these territories, right? These nations trying to say that they are Israelites. But look at here, R1B, common in Western Europe. N1C1 is a subclade found in this project, and it's especially common among Finns, Estonians. All right, we get the gist of it. Less common haplogroups that members have include others among others, and this is dealing with, look at this. This is Khazaria. So this is making it clear that E1B1A is a rare haplogroup among them, right? It says less common. It's saying it's not a common haplogroup. It says G2, GA, right? But then it goes on to say E and J haplogroups have Middle Eastern origins. This J haplogroup is filled with deceptions. As you notice, they are what? Pushing E further and further out of Northeast Africa, now coming up with constructs called the Levant and Middle East. This J haplogroup was created about 15, I would say, if we want to go on the conservative side, 10 years. But between 10 to 15 years after E was established for what was found, what was discovered in the caves, Caspian caves of Galilee, and also Nazareth in Galilee. They don't want to talk about that. They want to now push this J haplogroup nonsense and push E further away. But look at here, E and J haplogroups have Middle Eastern origin. You see all this junk doctrine, Middle Eastern. That's 1906, between 1903 and 1906 creation. All right. G, this is the one that we see now being pushed now more and more to Northeast, right? What they call the Middle East, but Northeast Africa. This is what many of them are pushing now. G. Look at this craziness. G. But look at how they're trying to make it more and more within Northeast Africa. This is Northeast Africa, family. And guess what? India, all of this was Africa at one time. This Indian Ocean, this was East Africa right here. India at one time was referred to as East Africa. All of this at one time was Africa. Don't let them lie to you, family. I'm going to do a special, matter of fact, actually, when I work on book number 2, I'm going to go in about Eastern Ethiopia, which was this whole territory right here. And this was referred to as the Ethiopian Ocean at one time. But anyway, but look at here. If we look at the gray areas, between 2 and 10%, right? This gray area, right? Then we get this dark area, 10 to 25%. Then when we get here, a darker gray, 25 to 50%. And then a black, but notice it's getting further and further away. But this is what they try to push now with this G haplogroup, right? Trying to make it closer to Northeast Africa, what they now deem the Middle East. But look at here, look at the concentrations, right? The higher concentrations, it's way outside of Northeast Africa, which they now try to call the Levant. So G2A, let's see what G2A says, right? G2A, the overwhelming majority of Europeans belong to the G2A subclade, and most Northern and Western Europeans fall more specifically G2A, right? But look at what it goes on to say. Almost all G2B found in Europe are Ashkenazi Jews. So we know R, but then we also see G2, right? Going back to, and it says it makes it clear, almost all G2B found in Europe are Ashkenazi Jews. So let's go back to the Khazaria source here, G2B, right? Make a note of that. G2B. All right, G2B. All right, let's go back to that Khazaria source that I shared here. Where's my mouse here? Let's go back to here. G2B right here. All right, actually, where's G2B? I thought it was here. No, right here. G2A. Where's G2B? All right. Does it have it here? I may have to go to the source, but G2A and also we have G2B. I thought it was mentioned here. My apologies. This G2A, but G2B is refers to the Ashkenazi Jews. I was trying to see if it's in the background here. G2A, 3, G2, and then we see G2A here. My apologies, family. I thought this said G2B, but we get the gist of it. It's still dealing with Europeans, right? Khazaria.com. This is not dealing with Northeast Africa. This is primarily focusing on the DNA haplotypes that's within the not the 1948ers, the Europeans, which the 1948ers, according to here. And when you look at certain sources, either it's going to fall up under R or it's going to fall up under G2B. R or G2B. But now they're trying to push J, right? You notice J is starting to be pushed by way of Iranians. Anyway, man, family, all the hustle, right? All the hustle. All the hustle. All the hustle. All right. Let's see here. Now, this source here, I know we've been going for a little while, almost 2 hours, right? All right, we'll go a little bit longer. But Sephardic. I'm here to tell you, family, Sephardic is a false title. Ashkenazi is a false title. None of the Israelites refer to this. When I questioned the 1980s, a lot of things were pushed in the 80s. Also, in the 8th and 9th century, a lot of things were pushed. Right? A lot of things were pushed. The creation of the Ashkenazi label, the Khazarian invasions, the Sephardic naming, all these different naming conventions, the creation of the Israeli language, starting with the Masoretic points. Right? So let me play this clip real quick. Since I played it earlier, I'm gonna play it one more time. And family, don't get caught up in the dates, because I don't get caught up in the dates. You know how they start coming up with 30,000 years, 100,000 years, and all this other stuff. Man, I don't get caught up in it. But listen to the key information. The key information, they're going to make it clear. They found Negro bones in the caves, the Caspian caves, Galilee, and also Nazareth, in those caves, right? What is called Israel today. They're Negroes. Can't get around it. Here it is.
Their bones were discovered in Kafse caves near Nazareth, in Galilee in 1933. 13 fragile skeletons, one a woman, a tiny baby at her feet. When these bones were first uncovered, they were the oldest complete modern human skeletons ever found.
The numerous skeletons that have been found in caves in Israel at the sites of Kafse and Shkul show us that there were modern humans outside of Africa over 100,000 years ago. Those modern humans may well have gone up the Nile corridor through Sinai and into the Middle East.
All right, family. So you heard it, right? Made it clear, right? Negro bones, complete bones, found in the caves, Caspian caves, and you see them, you heard with your own ears, mentioning Galilee and Nazareth. Can't get around it. Now, another point that I want to make, and I'm gonna bring up this slide here. I mean, this PDF, and I may even bring up my book as well, just to further deal with the DNA, and then we'll deal with we may go 3 hours, family. We may do another hour here, and we'll deal with mapping things out with these sources here. But anyway, let's go ahead and do this here. But one thing, and I'm sure you guys probably observed, I noticed how they now trying to separate, right? They have E1B, right? E1B1A, E1B1B, right? E was designated for Northeast Africa, right? E1B1A, E1B1B, E1B1A is supposed to be Shemitic, right? E1B1B is supposed to be Hamitic, right? But all in that area. But now what you see happening is that they're trying to push E1B1A out of Northeast Africa and push it. You know, they're doing that with E as well. But really now they're trying to, when I say they, the powers that be that's dealing with this DNA technology, they're pushing E1B1A further away as if it originated in West Africa. Have you guys noticed that? From some of you guys that are following the DNA stuff, have you guys noticed the things that they're doing with the DNA? Have you guys noticed that? If you notice that, type 1. And I believe it's just purposely making a mess of things, so it makes people to stay, don't even want to go near it out of confusion. All right, so let me share with you guys another source, and this is in my book, and I'm going to pull up Appendix 5 in my book. I mean, Appendix F. Just share with you guys a little information. I'm not going to give it all to you guys. The book is coming out pretty soon. Shout outs to Berean Scholar, did a great job with putting the cover together. Let's see here. Let me pull up this source here. Do I have it up here? All right. And I'm going to pull this over here. All right. Let me close this out. All right. Let me make sure my book is being shared. All right. Can you guys see the screen? Now I make reference to this source in my book. I explain this. All right. Let me see here. Let me zoom it in. If you guys can see this, type 1. And I'm going to explain more of this in my book here. So this is titled Y Chromosome E Haplogroups, Their Distribution and Implication to the Origins of Afro-Asiatic Languages and Pastoralism, right? Now, we know that when we deal with the Afro-Asiatic languages, right, it deals with, it breaks it into 6 major groups, right? When you look at the definition of it. But it's one group that tends to get overlooked, or as if it originated outside of the continent of Africa and brought into it, right? Now, this is from our book, and I'm just going to highlight what we see here. Highlight what we see here. I'm going to explain it here. Let me go to my book here. Let me go to F. And I actually explain that here, right? All right, this is Appendix F. Let me zoom it in. All right, guys, you're getting a sneak peek into my book, right? Can you guys see this? If you can see this, type 1, right? Let me let me move this to the screen over here. Let me see if that messes it up. All right. Let me make sure you guys can still see what I have here. Okay. Can you guys see this? All right. Let me zoom it out some. All right. Can you guys see this? All right. This is from the appendix, right? You know, some additional information within the book. As you can see here, the true origin of the Shemitic tongue. Okay. Now, this starts off by giving my thoughts on it, right? What we deal with the Shemitic languages, right? As you see here, the purpose of this appendix is not to introduce a new theory, but to restore the geographical and anthropological framework in which the Afro-Asiatic language family has long been understood. Modern discussion, this is where I'm reading that right here, right? Let's see here. I'm reading this here. Modern discussions of Semitic or Shemitic languages often begin with what is deemed the ancient Near East, the Middle East, and the Levant, which is actually Northeast Africa, while treating Africa as a neighboring influence. The investigation argues that this framework reverses the historical order. Shemitic or Semitic is not merely part of the Afro-Asiatic conversation, it stands at the center. Have you noticed, family, whenever they deal with certain subjects like the Shemitic languages, like being Shemitic, it starts outside of Africa, but not inside of Africa. You guys notice that? Even though Shemitic is a subgroup under Afro-Asiatic. Let me read that part again so you guys understand what I'm saying here, right? The Shemitic branch belongs to a language family whose deepest historical, anthropological, and geographic foundation are rooted in Africa. Throughout this investigation, African framework is treated not as peripheral, but as foundational to understanding the ancient language of Judah. So I don't start with it as it being on the outside looking in. It's at the center, just like everyone knows, even though they, try to minimize that. But guess what? We know that life began in Africa. Life began in Africa. The human race began where? In Africa. But they want to play this this game as if it started outside of Africa for Shemitic. So let me read this again. This investigation argues that this framework reverses the historical order. Semitic, in other words, Shemitic, is not merely part of the Afro-Asiatic conversation. It stands at its center. All right. So let's scroll down a little bit more. Let's share a little bit more of this real quick. Let me see. I got my mouse here. Make it easier to navigate. All right. All right, let's see here. This is where I'm getting at right here. According to Merriam-Webster, Afro-Asiatic is a language family, as you see here, of relating to or being a family of languages widely distributed over Southwestern Asia and Africa, including Semitic, Egyptian, Berber, Cushitic, and Khedive families, right? Subfamilies, right? So that definition is important because it places some Semitic or Shemitic within the Afro-Asiatic language family. Shemitic or Semitic is not an isolated European, medieval, or modern political category. It belongs to a larger linguistic family rooted across Africa and Southwestern Asia. And look at what this input right here says about the Merriam-Webster dictionary defining Semitic. It says, of relating to or constituting a subfamily of the Afro-Asiatic language that includes Hebrew, Amharic, Arabic, and Aramaic and Amharic. Yet the secondary entry shifts from language to peoplehood, defining Shemitic or Semitic, in other words, Shemitic, as relating to or characteristics of Semites, and from the modern reader quickly encounters the term Jewish. Come on, family. But let me just highlight one other point. The Casphian caves depositions, the skeleton of Galilee, right? And that's what you saw in the video for us. The real Eve. That's what actually the movie's called, The Real Eve. And it says their bones were discovered in the Casphian caves near Nazareth in Galilee in 1933. 13 fragile skeletons, one a woman, a tiny baby at her feet. When these bones were first uncovered, they were the oldest complete modern human skeletons found. The numerous skeletons that have been found in caves in Israel. Come on, family. So these are Negroes, family. These are E. These are E. They were labeled as E. E1, E1B, E1B1A, E1B1B. But this is in the territories of Israel. These are the very things that the 1948ers are getting control of, bombing and what? Reclassifying ancient information and inserting junk doctrine into there as if they are the originals, right? That's the Greek Roman agenda. All right, let me show you a little bit more here. That's in the source here. All right. Let's see, macro haplogroup E in the as the paternal tongue carrier. Now, this is dealing with, and this is still in this particular appendix, giving clarity on E. Look here, DNA genetics, E1B, right? It says the frequencies across many sub-Saharan population via E-M2 and related branches, especially among West and Central Africa, African groups in populations that expanded during the Bantu migration. High to moderate frequencies in the Horn and Northeast Africa, several EM35 derived subclades are common. Significant presence in North Africa and the Sahel includes among Berbers. Berber groups were particularly subclades. Particular subclades are frequent. All right. Let me see here. This is more information here. All right, I'm giving you guys a sneak peek here. This is still further proving E1B among our community. Let me see here. I want to get to a key point. If not, did I put it in there? I thought I had it in there. All right, but this is some additional sources here, family. All right. Let me see here. Yeah. Actually, yeah, this is this here. All right, let me zoom this out. All right. And this source is proving that even with dealing with the language, right? Because it mentions languages, right? The Shemitic languages, it points it to and connects it with E haplogroup. That's what this is doing here. I'm trying to see if I highlighted it here. I guess I didn't. All right. Right here. Let's see here. Let me highlight this part right here. Actually, where we want to start at. Let's start right here. Right? Intuitively, the high correlation between geographical distribution of some of the major E haplogroups and distribution of Afro-Asiatic languages exemplary of established correlation between languages and genes as proposed by Cavalli Sforza prompted us to revisit such correlation in a multidisciplinary platform better suited to unravel hitherto unto chapters of human history. No better venue to put such approach to practice than the area of Sahel in East Africa. All right, but this is still tying in what the languages. All right, let me see. All right. Let me scroll up a little bit. All right. But the key, look at the name of this, the name of this source. Y chromosome E haplogroups, their distribution implication to the origin of Afro-Asiatic languages. That's the key, family. Right? Archaeological and paleontological evidence point to East Africa as the likely area of early evolution. This dealing with modern humans, right? But it goes on to say, all right, the Proto Afro-Asiatic group carrying E, and he said C-P2 mutation may have appeared at this point in time and subsequently gave rise to the different population groups. But we're still dealing with what? E. All right. All right, family. I think that's all I want to touch on here. But that's that this entire source is connecting all of the Afro-Asiatic language groups to E, the haplogroup E. That's what this entire source is making reference to. All right. I'm trying to see if just at a glance if I see anything that stands out. All right, but you guys know how it goes when you're looking for something, all of a sudden seem like it's ducking you, and even though it's right in front of you. All right, so we go with that, family. Let me go ahead and this is a great source right here, fam. This is a great source. Okay. So let's, like I said, this is the book. All right, it'll be coming out pretty soon. All right. Again, all praises to the Most High for allowing me to do this. So I'm gonna have it available in paperback, hard copies, also audio. All right, let's go ahead and let me switch back over. All right, so let's bring back up my slides. All right, we're gonna go a little bit longer, family, because I did want to get to a key point. I went over this a while back, but I want to do this as a refresher. So let's remove this here. All right. All right, let's see here. All right. So Is the Sephardic Jews biblical? Family, no. And many will, see that the reference to the Sephardic or Sepharad is here. And actually, the proper pronunciation is Saparad because there was no PH or F sounds in ancient Hebrew, right? That is by way of the Greeks, the letter focus. So the actual pronunciation will be Saparad. But let me get to a key point here. All right, because many say, well, I see the word, so it has to be Sephardic. No, that's not how it works. Let's see what this word means. It says Sepharad, right? Really Saparad, right? It says here, it says a place where Israelites were exiled, site unknown. So it's telling us the site is unknown. The site is unknown. So how is it that they come up with this word or this label Sephardic? Site unknown is a red flag. It's a major trigger. The location, if the location of Sepharad is unknown, how did the Sephardic Jew label point to Spain? How did that happen? And when we go to the etymology of this word, look at what it says here. A Spanish or Portuguese Jew, see, word sauce, word of confusion, deception, Spaniards, Jews of Spain, name of a country mentioned only in Obadiah, verse 20, probably meaning Asia Minor. You see the layers of this here, probably. What? Probably. But identified by the rabbis after the Targum Jonathan as Spain, as distinct from Ashkenazism. So this is telling you that this is a recent construct that was created. This is getting into the really like between the 8th to 10th century. All right. So what is the date of the works of Targum Jonathan? I'm not going to read all of this, family, but it says, and this is where you got to know what you're talking about, because I was dealing with Gemini on this. It says the physical evidence, we do not have original manuscripts from the time of composition. Our earliest significant fragments come from Cario Genizia, or Genza, excuse me, dating roughly to between the 9th and 11th centuries. Right. So it was trying to say here, conclusion, while we can't prove it existed in its current form in the 1st century, we can say with certainty it was a finished authoritative text by the 500s CE because other writers were quoting it. Huh? Other writers quoting it, but you're trying to say this is a valid date, but yet here it says gives us between the 9th. No, family, it's like I said, it's convoluted, man. The whole information, right? So again, you see here, where we want to get to. All right, yeah. The association is not ancient. The Spain association is not ancient. There is no evidence from the ancient Near East that Sepharad referred to Spain. In reality, the term appeared in non-Jewish ancient records with a completely different geography. And this is dealing with Saparad, what I mentioned, but it has nothing to do with Spain, right? All right, let's see what else we have here. All right. No writer from the 1st to the 5th century CE, including Josephus, Philo, or the early church fathers, uses Sepharad for Spain. Even Jerome, late 4th century, was told by his Jewish teachers that it meant Bosphorus. Right. So it's saying here that there was no connection between Spain with Sepharad. That's what that is saying. All right, let's see what else we want to get to. It says hard dating. The term Sephardic as a cultural identity only becomes standard in Jewish usage around 8th to the 9th centuries CE. Come on, family. 8th to the 9th century CE. Whoever controls the pages controls our thoughts. All right, let me see what else I want to highlight here. All right, that's still repeating what we just pointed out. The Eastern Bible Dictionary, look at what it says about Sepharad. It says some locality unknown. So it's making it clear they don't know. So how is this designated to Spain? But this is a key thing. The modern Jews think that Spain is meant, and hence they designate the Spanish Jews, Sephardim, as they do the German Jews by the name Ashkenazim. Wait a minute, let me read that again. The modern Jews think that Spain is meant, and hence they designate it. So the modern so-called 1948ers, that's what this is saying. They created the term Sephardic. They the ones that's making the designation. Hence, they designated the Spanish Jews Sephardim. In other words, they came up with this term, as they do the German Jews by the name Ashkenazim, because the rabbis called Germany Ashkenaz. Come on, family. So they created this. They made this thing up. All right. So again, this is another source. The term Sephardic, as it is used in Israel by religious politicians, a terminology that has nothing to do with science. That's coming from this source right here. Right? Just so happened I have the book on my desk. Let me show you guys real quick. This book right here. All right? Just so happened I have it on my desk. All right? Let's see what it says inside this source, and then we're going to skip down to another key point because I see we're getting up there with time. This section right here, right there, look at what it says. The population studied are defined wrongly. The term Sephardic Jews being used for North African Jews, right? Remember, it says North African. It's not saying Middle East. But nevertheless, being used for North African Jews, Sephardic Jews are Jews whose ancestors were expelled from Spain in 1492, right? Zussman Diskins suspects that the author used the term Sephardic as it is used in Israel by religious politicians, because what they try to say when they use dealing with the word Sephardic, they try to use them as being more of a connector to what they call the Middle East. But this is making it clear that that term Sephardic, as it is used in Israel by religious politicians, saying this has nothing to do with bloodline. It has nothing to do with ancient history. These are modern stuff that was created and backdated. So again, the population studied are defined wrongly. The term Sephardic Jew being used for North Africa Jews. Sephardic Jews are Jews whose ancestors were expelled from Spain in 1492. Zeus Diskins suspect that the authors use the term Sephardic as it is used in Israel by religious politicians, a terminology that has nothing to do with science. In other words, it has nothing to do with DNA. It has nothing to do with bloodline. It has nothing to do with any of that but a political scheme. That's what this source is saying. All right. All right. All right. Now, let me do something interesting here. I did this a while back when me and Berean Scholar, the last time we were going over the Sephardic stuff. You know, I didn't get into this, but I did this a while back when I did a video regarding Candace Owens when she was dealing with the 1948ers, and I walked you guys through this. So I want to show you guys, and I'm going to do it one more time, see if I can do it within 30 minutes. I want to share with you guys about the importance, man, of sources, right? Show you guys that they know that we're the people of the book. But again, anyone or anything but the Negroes. They don't want to show that we are the originators. We're, because that would have such a rippling effect. That'll undermine every tactic that we see the 1948ers are doing right now. Africa and its inhabitants. Page 410. This is key, and we're going to double back to this here. As part of the local trade in the hands of the Muvambas, a people of grave and solemn aspect with intelligent eyes, straight or even aquiline nose, whose pronounced Semitic type has earned for them the Portuguese designation Judeos Preton, in other words, Black Jews. They may certainly be regarded as of Jewish origin, right? If the statement be true that they are strict observers of the Shabbat, abstaining even from all conversations on that day, according to the natives, the Mavumbas were expressly created by God to, all right, anyway. So the Mavumbas are mentioned on another map. Here's the other map. This is coming from Lost Tribe, a myth suggesting towards rewriting Hebrew history, page 257, right? And let me show you where the Mavumbas is mentioned, right? Let me zoom it in. And you see it here. All right. This book is used to highlight where all the Israelites, as far as the had from Israel, well, of course from Israel, all the Israelites migrated, or many of them migrated to some of these areas, and others fled deeper into Africa away from the Roman persecution. So, but notice what you see here. You see all the, let me take this out of here. You see all these different areas. These are Israelites. So Tomei, right? Benai Ephraim, right? We see Dahomey. I think that's Dahomey. Levites, notice where we see Levite cities. It's saying these are Levite cities. Let me zoom in so you guys can kind of help inspect this here. All right. If you guys can see this better, type 1. But look at here. Levite cities. Benai Ephraim. All right. All right. So just showing you guys some highlights on this. All right. All right. Okay. And this is another source. This is this is still coming out of the same source. Lost Tribe of Myth suggests towards rewriting Hebrew history. So we're going to see that this map gives some great information, but we're going to see how this guy literally tries to rewrite the history of what we just laid out, Africa and its inhabitants. A source that's at least 50 years older than this. And you're going to see how sources like this began to start rewriting our history from a perspective of insinuating that we are Israelites by way of conversion. Right? Let's highlight this here. Now we return to the Negro Jews of Luango Coast and their possible derivation from the Negro Judaism of the Portuguese Jewish colony of Sao Tome. But notice how they're making it into a religion. Notice how they're trying to make it into a religion. Let's go back to the other source here real quick. Right? This doesn't make any mention of conversion. A local part of the trade, you're right. Let me just go ahead and put that here. A part of the local trade in the hands of the Movumbas, a people, all right, it goes on to say, whose pronounced Semitic type has earned for them Portuguese designation of Judeos Preton, or Black Jews. They may certainly be regarded as Jewish origin. If the statement be true, they are strict observers of the Shabbat. So it's saying already, saying that they are recognized as being the people of the book, But now they're showing the culture here of them honoring the law, statutes, and commandments, starting with the Shabbat, which is a staple, a signature for the Israelites. So let's go back to here. All right, I should have just zoomed back over. So going back over, it says their possible derivation from the Negro Judaism of the Portuguese Jewish colony of São Tomé. All right, so this is dealing with conversions. It goes on to say, Alvaro Camina took with him to São Tomé. Took with him to São Tomé 2,000 Negro children and 7 years age and under whom the king had allowed Castilian Jews to carry off. Now, these Castilians, Jews, they were enslaving Negroes. These are converts here. These are 1948ers connected to the 1948ers. These are Europeans. They are enslaving these Israelites here. Coming from what? The Portugal, designated, right? These people are designated as being who? Judeos-Breton, right? In one of the sources we just shared, but also some other sources I'm going to share with you as we explain this here. But look at what it says here. But this is the key. Castilian Jews, these are Europeans. A few years before the establishment of the Inquisition, and the Canaries engaged in the slave trade and aiding their refugee co-religionists from Portugal. But with the initial facts before us, we recognize that a considerable free Negro Judaism was certain to develop in São Tomé, that the mercantile colonies of these free Jewish Negroes were certain to spread to the adjacent coast. So they're talking about conversion. This point is of value as showing continual migration of nominally converted African people. Come on, family. Notice the wording here. Abbot Poyart was much interested by the fact that the Negro parents occasionally had children that remained all their lives as white as Europeans. Anyway, this guy, man. He met Portuguese Negroes in Guinea who called themselves Portuguese. All right, let me see it. Let me go back here. We may compare Winwood Reed's statement that he met Negroes in Guinea who called themselves Portuguese and boasting their Portuguese ancestry. All right. But nevertheless, this is a good and yet bad source without most used without actually recognizing the author's attempt to rewrite history. What's revealing is how the Lost Tribes, a Myth suggests towards rewriting history was first published in 1930 by Duke University Press, but subtly reframes what earlier cited sources already recorded about the Muvambas, right? Decades earlier, Elise Recluse, Africa and its inhabitants, nevertheless, right? Volume 2, right, documents that Muvambas and Judeos-Breton, in other words, Black Jews, and ties their identity to origin and covenant practices, stating they were strict observers of Shabbat, abstaining even from conversations on that day without any suggesting that they were converts to Judaism. Made no mention to that. But now, once we get to the source I just shared, that's about between 30 to 50 years later, now suddenly we're seeing the word converts being thrown around. Does that make sense, everyone? But the Lost Tribes injects missionary language and then uses Judaism in a way that carries a conversion overtone, as if the identity was adopted through colonial contact. The practice stays consistent across the record, but within 40 to 50 year window, the framing shifts, showing how quickly African Hebrews identity could be relabeled, reinterpreted, repackaged through a European lens. So again, let's continue here. The Lost Tribes, a myth suggests towards rewriting history, Hebrew history, which it literally is, doesn't just discuss identity, it assigns hierarchy. Yes. It pushes Negroes into the 10 lost tribes category while using modern constructs like Ashkenazi and Sephardic to control legitimacy, right? Coming up with all these different names, right? Modern names and backdating it, right? And reserve the authoritative tribes like Judah, Benjamin, and Levi for those deemed acceptable. The result is managed narrative, where Negro Israelites can be acknowledged, but only in a diminished role, while priesthood, kingship, and covenant authority remains monopolized through modern labels. Right now, this is a primary source: Black Jews, the religious challenge, or political versus religion, page 231. This is one of those sources that continues to promote this foolishness. But I want to highlight one key point here, because I'm not going to read all of this. This comes, what I'm getting ready to share here is giving you what they use as a baseline to identify who's who, right? But I'm going to knock down and debunk this stuff here. This gives like four things that they will use. Like, the following are the major sources that need to be considered in such analysis, right? And this is dealing with who's Israelites, right? What they use as a criteria to determine whether or not if many of the communities in Africa that they came across were actually Israelites. Witness tales of explorers who mentioned the existence of communities of Black Jews on the African continent. We know if you say Black Jews, that means that there's white Jews. So again, this is contradictory label here, and particularly in the areas where the slave ships picked up the Black slaves. Then it goes on to say rights and customs, which have more or less explicit analogies with those of Judaism. Then we see here semantics and dialectology of some African societies reveals some features comparable with those of Judaism. Then we see the deduction and conclusion of anthropological and sociological work done in Africa. But this is the key here, family. This is where we get into a key point I want to make sure. It says, it is well known. Let me zoom that in. It is well known that 1,500 years before Islam, Judaism was present in Africa. Travelers' tales and the stories of journeys across North Africa, the Sahara, and the Sudan provide considerable evidence of existence of the existence of Jewish communities on the African continent. We know that from the time of Saint Jerome, right, a chain of Jewish commercial towns stretched almost uninterrupted. So it's making it clear from Mauritania to India, right, saying that there was uninterrupted Jewish commercial towns. How come we don't hear that come up in the Grok conversation? How come we don't see what's her name, Kim Iversen, pressing this information? St. Augustine learned Hebrew in Tazim, where there was a Judeo-Syrian colony which came from Cyrenaica. These groups went as far as Okar in southern Sahara, and according to Chronicles of the Sudan. All right. So we see here this saying that it is well known, that is documented, that for that 1,500 years before Islam, it says Judaism, but we know that we're not dealing with a religion. We know that what this is saying, that they were practicing their culture. They was practicing honoring the law, statutes, and commandments, practicing the Shabbat. But it says here 1,500 years before Islam, Judaism was present in Africa. 1,500 years, family. That is big. Islam was created when? In the 6th century. 1,500 years before Islam, Judaism was present in Africa. All right. So I just read all of this here, so I don't have to read all of this again. 1,500 years, right? So again, it is well known that 1,500 years before Islam, Judaism was present in Africa. All right. So if it is well known, according to this author, that Judaism was present in Africa 1,500 years before Islam, then by basic chronology, Islam emerging in the 6th, 7th century, this places that presence deep into the antiquity, roughly 5 to 600 BCE, not a late or recent conversion phenomenon that they try to make it out to be. So you see here, family, the math is not mathing because they contradicting themselves. So yet the author still frames Negro Israelites as so-called Black Jews as African groups who merely adopted Judaism. That's what that source does, which is a narrative, right? A narrative sleight of hands. It only works if Africa is stretched as separate from Israel, as if Israel is not in Northeast Africa, and if Judaism is treated as something that arrives later, rather than covenant identity preserved across generations. That's how they could get away with their schemes. In other words, the timeline they admit undermines the very agenda they push. Ancient presence does not support a conversion story. It supports continuity. So this knocks down this whole Kim Iversen nonsense that she's pushing with this Gronk. See, if it is well known, according to this author, again, that Judaism was present in Africa 1,500 years before Islam, then by basic chronology, Islam emerging in the 6th to the 7th century, this places presence deep into the antiquity, again, roughly to 5 to 600 BCE. All right. The Jews of Spain and Portugal in the Inquisition. This makes it clear. This makes it clear, family. We can just go ahead and highlight a few things here, right? But it makes it clear we're dealing with Negroes here that was enslaved, right? Let me see here. Let me go here. Leaving them to die, right? Starvation to be to be sold into slavery by Moors. We're not dealing with 1948ers. We're not dealing with Europeans being sold into slavery. We're dealing with Negro Israelites. Nor was this all the king wrested from their parents. All children between the ages of 3 and 10 of those Jewish immigrants who from poverty or otherwise had admitted to pay the capitation tax on entering, right? Or who were forced to remain in Portugal and had them transported to the newly discovered island of St. Thomas or São Tomé, right? This is another source, America being the latest and most accurate description of the New World. John Ogilvy, right? Look at what it says here. The Portuguese that dwelt on the island informed the Netherlanders that few lived above 50 years. But here's the kicker. Not yet withstanding the great gain tempted them to tarry, several of them having 200 or 300 Negroes that worked the sugar mills of John III, King of Portugal, sent a colony thither above 200 years before, whom though the unwholesome air destroyed, yet the place was not left desolate, and he sent new inhabitants who first settled in Guinea next to Angola, and lastly on the island of St. Thomas, that so they might be better us to the air, that the said king sold all those Jews for slaves. Wait a minute. So all these Negroes are being recognized as who? Jews who are being sold, Israelites who are being sold for slaves that refuse to embrace the Roman religion. So this is giving you more in-depth or insight on the Spanish Inquisition. It's saying these Negroes who were sold into slaves, right, dealing with the Spanish Inquisition, right, Roman religion, because they didn't want to embrace the Roman religion, right, the Catholicism, and cause their children to be baptized, they were enslaved, from whom coming thither in great numbers, most of them present inhabitants were descended. Critical review, right? Society of Gentlemen confirms this by saying here, King John II, 1492, expelled all the Jews to the island of St. Thomas, right, which had been discovered in 1471 to other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa. And from these banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called, right, Black Portuguese, like from these banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews in Luango, who despised even by their very Negroes, are descended by these colonists. St. Thomas soon became a considerable place of trade and valuable for its sugar plantation. All right, so we getting clarity on who these people are. Look at what it says. The colonists had plantations furnished with from 150 to 3,000 Negro slaves. So these Negro slaves are what? Let's go back here. Black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews in actually from these banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called. So these banished Jews, they are who? They are Negroes. They are, it's saying again, from these banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called, going all the way back to the Mavumbas, Africa and its inhabitants, dealing with what? The Mavumbas, being referred to as what? Black Jews or Portuguese Jews or Judeos Praeton, right? Let me go back here. You know, guys, we toggling. I know we doing a marathon. We're going Jerry Lewis tonight. I'm going a little overtime, a little longer than what I would normally do. Been a while since I had one of these. If we go back here, this is Africa and its inhabitants, volume 2, Elise Recluse, going back to this portion of the source, right? A local part of the trade is in the hands of the Mavumbas, a people of grave solid. Let me zoom it in so you guys can see it. I'm not going to even put my page rip on here. All right. Semitic type has earned for them the Portuguese designation of Judeos Praeton or Black Jews. But it says what? The Portuguese designation. That's important. The Portuguese designation. They know we the people of the book family. They know it. All right? They know we the people of the book. Let's go back to that source here. Let's go back to this source here. All right. All right. So again, these are dealing with banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called. We don't learn about, we don't hear about this when anyone outside of our community dealing with the Spanish Inquisition, do we? St. Thomas soon became a considerable place of trade and valuable for its sugar plantations. All right. All right. Plantations furnished with from 150 to 3,000 Negro slaves. Guinea, Congo, Manicongo, and the colonists had plantations. All right. Let's go to another source. Remember this map here, family? Dealing with King Solomon's travel, right? The map identifies the biblical port of Ophir associated with the legends of King Solomon. Ophir was said to be a kingdom of limitless wealth, which from Solomon collected the gold needed to construct the first temple. All right, so let's go to fast forward here. Let's fast forward. Let's look at this map here. 3 critical details of this map, right? Mar de los Tyrios Hebreos, in other words, transliterated to Sea of the Tyrian Hebrews. That's this section right here. All right. That's this section right here. Okay. Let me toggle over so I can see the chat. All right. That's the section right here, family. Let's highlight another point about this map. 2 Chronicles 8 and 18. We see Ophir, right? And Humron sent him by the hands of his servants, ships and servants that had knowledge of the sea, and they went with the servants of the Solomon to Ophir. So we see Ophir right here. Just take these 2 notes out of here. So, of course, they had to travel all the way around. That's Sao Tome here. All right, getting gold. Remember, this is the Gold Coast. So remember, according to the Black Jews source I shared, says Judaism had a presence here 1,500 years before Islam. So that means that by way of King Solomon coming all the way here to get gold from the temple. Isn't this the same section that Mansa Musa? All right, okay, all right. You ain't hear from me. Ain't the one to gossip, right? Right. And this point right here is this Sao Tome. This is the Gold Coast. This is the slave ports are here. All right. We can confirm this to First Kings. I'm not going to read all of this, but you see here, and they came to Ophir and fetched from thence gold 402 talents and brought it to King Solomon. So lastly, this island here identified as Sao Tome, also known as St. Thomas, right? And this is dealing with this section right here that we highlighted. But look at here. You guys know this map right here? Y'all remember this map? Right? Negro land. So we see the contradictions on this map here. This is the contradiction right here. I kind of brushed over it. This is what seemed to be a contradiction. I'm credibly informed that a country about 100 leagues north of the coast of Guinea is inhabited by white men, or at least a different kind of people, from the blacks who wear clothes and have a use of letters, make silk, and that some of them keep the Christian Shabbat. That makes absolutely no sense, does it? Yes, son of Judah, I have that book, Creole New Orleans Race. That's one of the sources I use because it has some great information about the ports and what slaves were on what ships, right? Anyway, great source. But nevertheless, let's continue here. All right. So the contradictions isn't that the Mavombas changed their worship day. It's that Europeans mislabeled what they were seeing, right? Right? The 1710 Herman map claims that inland West Africans kept the Christian Shabbat. But Elise Recluse is far more specific, describing the Mavombas as strict observers of the Shabbat, abstaining from all conversations that day. So going back, that Africa and its inhabitants, that should be your baseline right there, because anything coming after that, you start seeing this conversion terminologies are being used, noting that the Portuguese called themselves Judeos Pret, in other words, Black Jews. So it doesn't say anything about conversion. Doesn't have any suggestions of that, right? Mavombas as strict observers of Shabbat. So that level of strict separation aligns with the seventh-day Shabbat patterns found in the law and the prophets, not modern Sunday church culture. In other words, the practice remained the same, but the colonial narrative tried to reframe it as Christian to fit a European lens. All right? Going back to Africa and its inhabitants, right? This is on page 267, right? And you'll see some of this reference as what was brought up about the source here. Creole New Orleans race even highlights the last ship that went into that area. All right. But look at here. East Great Popo, right? Let me zoom it in. East of Great Popo begins the Dahomey territory, guarded by important town of Glewe, known to Europeans by various names of Fida, Havada, Wida, and Waidu or Waida. The old writers called it Judah. The who writers? It says the old writers called it Judah, and its inhabitants were said to be Jews, while the neighboring river Allah or Alala, whose real name is Ephra, became the Euphrates. But the Key family is saying that this area was on that map that we saw below Negro land, right? The Gold Coast or the Slave Coast, right? That area right above Sao Tome, the same territory that King Solomon's soldiers traveled, guess what, family? It is saying that that area was called Judah. It was called Judah. It says the old writers called it Judah, and its inhabitants were said to be Jews, right? We know in the proper context, Judah or Israelites. Let me pull it up again. The old writers called it Judah, right? Its inhabitants were said to be Jews. I'm trying to zoom it in again. My mouse keep acting up. All right. All right. Anyway. All right. So let's continue, family. So according to this source, Wida is Judah. That is not my interpretation. That's what this source says. That is the testimony of early writers preserved in a documented historical work. And this isn't an isolated reference. There are multiple maps, sources that confirm the Hebrew identity or identification of this territory and preserve this original name before later revisions and omissions. Right, here's another map. 1742 Covens Mortier map of West Africa. Look at here. Look at what it says here. Let's zoom that in. Look at what you see here. You see Judah, right? The coastal map area highlighted highlights area, the highlighted area of in the Bight of Benin, the Slave Coast region is clearly labeled Judah, which is often shown on older European maps in and around the same zone as Wida or Owida, right? So we see Judah here, family. Let me see if I can zoom it in without it. It's already distorted because I had to zoom it in, but let's zoom it in more. You see Judah there? Come on, family. Can't get around it. So if that's Judah, and remember in the map that I shared earlier, highlights right from that book that I shared with you guys, I may go back to it. It says this area was also Levite. So here it is. We have Judah and we had Levite territories here. Is that a coincidence? Is that a coincidence? Let me toggle back to that source here. That let's toggle back to let me toggle back to this other map here. All right. That's Negro land. And below Negro land, we see the Slave Coast, Wida, right? But let's go further back. Let's go to the other source that I initially shared. Actually, it was the second source. Let's go back to that map. This is the map I want to go to, right? And look at what you see here, right? Above where Wida would be, right, in this area here, we see, actually around this area. Yeah, it's around this area, Sao Tome, the island. But we see Levite territory. That's still what? In the vicinity of Judah. That shouldn't surprise you because now you're getting into the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and the Levites. All right. Let's go back here. All right. Let's go back to this map here. All right. And we'll zoom it in. So we see Judah in the map that I shared with you guys from that initial source had these territories here being Levi or the Levites. All right. All right. So this matters because it demonstrates that European cartographers preserved a naming tradition where Wida was associated with Judah in print. not just in oral claims, but or modern speculation, right? All right, this is uh, going into another area here. Let me see what I want to, if there's anything else I want to share. All right, because the brother is getting tired. All right. The brother is getting tired. Let me see if there's anything else here that we want Kim Iversen to address. Which she would, which she won't. All right. Do we want to touch on this? All right. I was trying to see Spain and Portugal. Let me go back a little bit. I think I know where it is. All right. This is more sources proving the complexion of the Israelites. Let me see here. All right. Of course, you guys saw me bring this out a few times, but this is the who is this guy? This is Earl Daniel Earl of Nottingham. So this is giving you a description of him. And what's important of this is that this is the Secretary of State, right? But look at how he's described. That's what's important here. It says here, very black. It says a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or Jew. So it's saying he's very dark, very black, meaning his complexion is very dark, like a Spaniard or Jew. So this is making it clear in this source in 1773, describing this individual in 1773, this tells you that the Israelites and the Spaniards at that time were very dark people, as you see here, very black man, like a Spaniard. Okay, so that's important. Okay. Mackie doesn't say tan, he doesn't say swarthy, he says, or dark, he says a tall, thin, very black man. And he's using that as a comparison to the Spaniards, and as for the sake of conversation, Jews, right? Showing that their complexion was very black. That would be Kadar, right? All right. Spanish and Jews were common reference points for a very dark complexion. The comparison assumes the reader already understood that Spaniards and Jews were often described as very dark or black. That's why it reads the way it is. That's why it's not a controversy back in that time. So this exposes the modern rewrite. In other words, today Jews is treated as a white phenotype. Modern narratives, I'm saying white according to the institution of race. So modern narratives often treats ancient Israelites and the descendants during the so-called Jewish appearance as European, white, in other words, Ashkenazi, Middle Eastern, in other words, olive at most, never very black, right? So this 1773 quote proves that in English discourse, Jew can be used as a complexion comparison, a visible type descriptor, a category of dark appearance. So the modern so-called white Jew default is not timeless, but it's a later social construct. It's a later social construction by way of the institution of race. This quote proves that in the 1700s, the Jews, so to speak, was not a protected European whiteness category. It was commonly associated with darkness to the point where the author could call a man very black and say he looked like a Spaniard or Jew. They say that now, right? You make someone make a reference to that, now they'll be called anti-Semitic, right? Am I right, guys? What do you think? You call a so-called Jew today as being very black, right? Say that they Jews look like they're very black, like a Spaniard or a Jew, or describing someone as very black, like a Spaniard or a Jew. That'll be called, anti-Semitic. That'll get into all kinds of controversies, right? Yeah, I got the map with lamb on it, and even on the initial map that I shared, it has lamb on it as well. All right, all right. This is another source, right? The Jews of southern Spain, and compare them with those of Holland and North Germany to perceive a very striking difference. The Spanish Jews is always dark complexion and hair is uniformly black. Let me say that again. I'm gonna show you the source, right? This quote, Barrington, this is the source called the uh Treatise on Physical Geography, comprising hydrology. I'm not going to read all of this here, but it's saying that here again, the Spanish Jews is always dark complexion and his hair is uniformly black. When they say dark there, they are not dealing with olive. They are not dealing with Middle Eastern. They are not dealing with Caucasians. They are not dealing with Europeans. They are dealing with Negroes. And look at this source here, page 297 and 298. This is what I'm making reference to. It says here the argument from intermixture is further rebutted by historic knowledge. Thus, the Jews are a people who have ever, according to the prophecies, dwelt alone without intermixing with the nations to this day. So, didn't remember what's her name? Kim Iversen said that the Jews did not mix and mingle, that they married from within. Well, guess what, Kim Iversen? And I hope that someone from her team presents this to her. I would love to have a conversation with her to show this here of her biased approach. The argument of intermixture is further rebutted by historic knowledge. Thus, the Jews are a people who have ever, according to the prophecies, dwelt alone without intermixing. So this is for someone that had posted in the comments earlier saying that the Israelites were mixing and meshing and all. No, without it says they dwelt alone without intermixing with the nations to this day. Now, the separate race, all descendants from brown ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, must have been as dark as Mr. Yohanan, if not darker, exhibit every shade of color from black Jews to Malabar. Come on, family. And it goes on to say, we need go no further than the Jews of southern Spain. Didn't we just deal with with the Spanish and Portuguese, dealing with the Inquisition, and what happened? They were enslaved because they didn't want to pay those taxes, and they didn't want to bow down to Catholicism, and they were banished to Sao Tome and some of the other Portuguese settlements in Africa, enslaved. Come on, family. Come on, family. Right? The Spanish Jews is always, wait a minute. Look at here, family. The Spanish Jews is always dark complexion and hair is uniformly black, whilst the German Jews is often as fair as any German, saying that the German Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, they look like any other German person. They look like the people that's in that area. Right? This is where you get into conversion. They said the German people, you cannot make a distinction between the locals and the so-called, the local Germans versus the so-called German Jews. That's what it's saying here. Whilst the German Jews is often as fair as any German. In other words, they look like everyone else, and has light or red hair with blue eyes. The various shades of color observable among the Negro or African race tends to the same conclusion, right? In other words, this is saying that, let's read it again. The Spanish Jews is always dark complexion and hair is uniformly black, right? But then when we go over here, the various shades of color observable among the Negroes or African race tends to the same conclusion. Along the coast of Guinea, which is low marshy or and hot, we find jet black complexions, and this is the very country from which American Negroes have been derived. But when we come to the elevated regions of the interior or pass into southern Africa, we find the very same race variations, various shades of brown from a dad mahogany to a light copper. So guess what? It's saying that, hey, we come in all kinds of shades of darkness, family. That's what this is saying here. All right. It says some were banished from Italy in 1342, from Spain in 1462, from Low Countries in 1350, from France in 1403, and from England in 1422. We can prove all of these referring to who? Negroes. Are there any proof Negro Israelites were in Italy, France, and England? Yes, family. Look at how depiction of the Negroes and the Israelites in Amsterdam. Look at here. Some of the accepted stereotypes of Jewish racial otherness, including the beliefs that Jews were black, needed to be qualified. When Williams Brereton jotted down his impressions of the Jews in the synagogue in Amsterdam in 1635, he noted that the Jewish men were most black and insatiably given unto women. So it's making it clear that they were most black. That's saying very black. They was very dark-skinned Negroes, and says linking blackness to licentiousness. In other words, saying that they, stereotypes of being, promiscuous and all of that stuff. But anyway, but it says that they were most black. Come on, family. Right? We're here, sir, over 200. Let me go back here. So in 1635, right? This is saying that William Brereton, right? He went to visit this location in Amsterdam, and he noted that these Israelites, they were most black, right? So then later, about 60 years later, Scottish minister Robert Kirk toured London in January 1690. He also paid a visit to this particular synagogue there, where he observed over 200 Jews worshiping. He noted in his journal that they were all very black men and distinct in their reasoning as gypsies. So this is making it a highlight that in a span of 60 years, two different individuals went to the same location and made the same observation, that the Israelites in Amsterdam, they were very dark, very black, as you see here, very black men. Right? You can't make this up, right? But then it goes on to say, let me see here. Let's see here. Look at here. The mission observes, right? Because, is only true of the Portuguese Jews, who, marrying always among one another, beget children like themselves. Consequently, swarthiness of their complexion is entailed upon their whole race. So it's saying the Portuguese Jews didn't marry outside, kept to themselves. The swarthiness, right? That's dark, right? Come on, family. All right. All right. I have seen at Prague are not blacker than the rest of their countrymen. It says Jews who are originally of Germany, those, for example, I have seen at Prague are not blacker than the rest of their countrymen, right? So basically, again, just reiterating that the so-called German 1948ers, they look just like the local other Germanic tribes there, the Anglos, the Saxons, the Scythian Jots, right? All right, let's see here. So James Shapiro's Shakespeare in The Jews preserves exactly what later narratives tried to bury. Early modern Europeans repeatedly described Israelites, especially the Portuguese and Spanish communities, as black, not as a modern white construct. All right, we about to wrap this up, family. All right. I'm just seeing if I need to highlight anything else. All right. All right. I'm just fast forwarding, family. We're going to wrap it up here. All right. What is this? This is dealing with Cleopatra, making it clear that Cleopatra was as you see here, extremely fruitful in heads of Negroes and also Negresses, the latter often in the character of Cleopatra. See, you know, centuries ago, they had no problem of stating that Cleopatra was a negresses, right? Because negresses is the feminine uh, word for Negroes. Negroes are often referred to as men, negresses, women, right? But it's placing Cleopatra in the category of being what? A Negro. Look, extreme fruitful in the heads of Negroes and also negresses. The latter is often in character of Cleopatra holding to her breast the asp. So it making it clear that Cleopatra was a Negro. All right. I'm not going to go through all of this here. And this is basically given for further proof with sources dealing with Amsterdam, and that's what this is dealing with here. This is also now getting into England, right? Let me see here. All right, family. I'm just looking here, seeing if any. We're gonna stop right here. Brother is getting tired. Right, brother is not getting tired. Brother is tired, and I got a lot to do in the morning. All right, I'm gonna put this in the book, right? All right. Let me see if there's anything else we can highlight before we wrap up. There is, and this is going to be the last one we highlight. And this is as you see, the Messiah of the Christians and Jews held a discourse between a Christian and a Jew. Written first in Hebrew, rendered into English by Paul Isaiah. Look at what it says here. All right. And God save you. How know you me to be a Jew, that you speak in Hebrew with me? Art thou a Jew? So this is a question that's being asked. Jew is asking, how do you know that I'm an Israelite? How do you know that I'm a Jew? And this is what the Christian says. Right? Christian, I am not a Jew, neither of thy people, neither am I acquainted with you, but from the form of your face, I knew you to be a Jew. For you Jews have a peculiar color of face, different from the form and figure of other men, which thing hath often filled me with admiration, for you are black and uncomely and not white. So when it says a different form or different from the form and figure of other men, dealing with the face, right? Remember, we could go back here to the map. Let's go back to this map, right? And how they were described. When I say they, the Israelites were described. Let's go back to the Mavumbas. We don't even have to go back to the map. We'll go back to Africa and its inhabitants, and it's going to deal with the facial features. Right? It says, yeah. intelligent eyes, straight or even aquiline nose, whose pronounced Semitic type has earned for them the Portuguese designation, Judeo's pretus. All right, so this is dealing with the facial features. All right, let's go back here. All right, we covered a lot tonight, family, and we're going to wrap it up here. Let's go down. All right. It says here again, the question's being asked. How do you know? Like when it's, let's go back here. And God save you. How know you me to be a Jew? That you speak so in Hebrew with me. Art thou a Jew? Excuse me. All right, what happened here? Oh, all right. All right. I am not a Jew, neither of thy people, neither am I acquainted with you. But from the form of your face, I knew you to be a Jew. For you Jews have a peculiar color of face, different from the form and figure of any other men, which thing hath often filled me with admiration. For you are black and uncomely, and not white. Yeah, family. We got plenty of sources, plenty of sources. We're going to stop right here. All right. Because I already went past my 2-hour threshold. I have a 2-hour window and I went way past my 2-hour window. So we're going to stop right here because this presentation, we could be going until continuously until next Shabbat. And we're not going to do that. Right. I got things I got to do tomorrow. Got an event that we have tomorrow at the out at the park. So nevertheless, let me go ahead and stop this here. Didn't realize we had some super chats here. Let me give some shout outs here. My apologies, family. Don 3780 super sticker. Thank you for the love and support. Bertrand, thank you for the love and support, as well as Cheryl Ashby. Oh, come on. I'm a Cheryl. My apologies. I did not see you here in the building. My apologies. Charge it to my head, not to my heart. And lastly, Mathia, thank you for the love and support. Elder holding it down in California. Really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to your book and am delighted that you made an audio version. Appreciate you, Amma. Family, let's show some love to everyone that contributed tonight. Really appreciate you guys. Really appreciate you guys. All right. But we're going to stop right here, family. We're going to call it a wrap. Go into the comment section and post comments, family. That's going to help with the reachability. Click that like button, share the video, even if you don't have an active YouTube channel in terms of you're uploading things to it. Just share it. You can still share it on your page. Share whatever videos that you see here over there. It helps with the reachability. Again, that's the only way we can fight this shadow banning that YouTube is doing and has done. All right. So with that being said, right, in the words of Yahweh that he gave to Moses in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, he said, fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today will not have power over you again. The Most High will fight for you. But we have to hold our peace, family. The Hebrew word in the scripture is charash, which means be quiet. Can't go back. Can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.
There is something special about you, Judah. There is something special about you, Israel, or Yashara'al. When I say Judah, Yahawada. That is the ancient pronunciation of the word. There is something special about you, Judah. Yahweh only spoke to you, to us, as a nation. And he spoke to no other nation. That's why we are supposed to be what? That light. We're Yah's chosen people that's separated. We're supposed to be the nation that's teaching the nations, not the nations teaching us.
Lion of Judah come upon the earth, bringing unquenchable fire. All the tribes of Israel and the believers stand in power. Speak with authority, worship uncontrollably. There's something about you, Judah. Fire upon the kingdom of darkness. We may suffer for a little while, but joy cometh in the morning.
Judah special, no wonder we were a chosen vessel. In and out of captivity, weaving like a pretzel. Messiah come through the tribe, clean out the bloodline. We disciples, so put us up on the front line. Face to face with crime, cause we ain't scared to grind. When you connect the divine, we stay pressed for time. Evangelize, can define, put us in prison in. Worship first, but we always invite the spirit in. All revival through a pen, stacking souls in empty bins. Joy in the morning, this a warning, you will never win. Fire upon the head of the serpent, he makes tail chirping. It's too late cause your tail's already burning. I don't want your riches, got a mansion with gold streets. Movers all around me, the light shine, no police. The living used to be deceased, resurrected to a feast. Nothing like being in peace at the table with the meat.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was the... Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.